Kedengeran suaranya pas itu.
Selamat datang. Kami ucapkan kepada yang terhormat
Sudah.
Kepala Dinas Kesehatan Provinsi Bandung. Yang kami hormati Kepala Dinas Pariwisata Provinsi Bandung.
Ada tidak?
Yang kami hormati Ketua Persi Bandung. Ketua Administrasi Wilayah Bandung. Para narasumber seminar dan workshop serta hadirin yang berbahagia. Puja dan puji syukur kami panjatkan kehadiran Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, karena berkat rahmat Beliaulah kita dapat berkumpul di sini pada hari Kamis 7 September 2023 dalam acara Seminar Internasional dan Workshop Penyusunan Bisnis Plan untuk Medical Wellness. Adapun susunan acara pada hari ini adalah sebagai berikut: pembukaan, menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya, doa, laporan Ketua Panitia, sambutan staf khusus Menteri Kesehatan Bidang Ketahanan Resiliensi, Industri Obat dan Alat Kesehatan Kementerian Kesehatan Republik Indonesia, acara seminar dan diskusi, penutup dan makan siang. Dilanjutkan dengan workshop bisnis plan setelah makan siang. Yang kami hormati, acara selanjutnya adalah laporan Ketua Panitia kepada yang terhormat Bapak Dr. Gede Wiryana Patra Jaya Lantas kami selamat.
Bergaul kan? Audio kamu? Udah coba ya, tapi katanya bergaul nggak ada. Oh, nggak bisa.
Dan Bapak Ibu dari sekalian yang saya hormati, saya nanti bersama
ya, sebentar Pak. Sebentar masih cepat cari.
Untuk mengikuti dan sinar nasional, proses penyusunan
Ini baru
yang kami hormati pemerintah Indonesia
Ada mixer di belakang.
Dan pemerintah
Sebentar.
dengan telah mencanangkannya program pada tanggal 10
Coba saya pakai settingan yang biasa dulu. Coba pakai settingan biasa dulu.
Dan juga diberikan atau apresiasi oleh Bapak Menteri Kesehatan Republik Indonesia. Hari ini adalah merupakan kelanjutan dari apa yang telah dicanangkan, yaitu dengan kita mengadakan seminar dan workshop, di mana pada hari ini kita akan membahas tentang bagaimana program medical wellness. Selanjutnya adalah workshop ini kita rencanakan dalam rangka untuk dapatnya program-program atau produk-produk yang sudah ada di Bandung atau di itu bisa kita operasionalkan. Perencanaan atau bisnis plan yang kita bangun di sini dimulai dengan menentukan produk-produk medical wellness, segmen mana yang akan kita ambil, kemudian bagaimana mengemasnya, dan bagaimana pengguna dapat melakukan reservasi dan pembayaran secara online. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, kegiatan seminar dan workshop ini terselenggara berkat kerjasama antara Bali Medical Tourism Association bersama dengan FK-KMK, Fakultas Kedokteran Universitas Gajah Mada, Resi Bali dan M.Sc. Dan pembicara pada kesempatan ini adalah Bapak Weigl beliau adalah Managing Director daripada FK-KMK Internasional yang sudah hadir datang dari perjalanan dari Thailand, Malaysia dan kembali. Kita berikan aplaus dulu beliau. Kemudian Prof. Laksono Trisnantoro, kemudian dalam workshop nanti juga ada tim dari BMTA, tim dari FK-KMK, FK-KMK, dan juga moderator akan dibantu oleh teman-teman dari versi Bali yang masih ada. Untuk peserta daripada kegiatan ini secara on-site, ya, langsung hadir ini sebanyak 50 orang, dan secara online kemarin malam terdaftar ada 296 peserta. Jadi peserta ini bukan hanya berasal dari Bali, tapi juga adalah dari berbagai daerah yang ada di Indonesia. Untuk itu maka kami mohon mengucapkan terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya atas partisipasi dan perhatiannya. Dan khususnya untuk kegiatan workshop kami terpaksa untuk menutup dulu karena kuota yang kita sediakan adalah 10 tim. Jadi 2 hari yang lalu 10 tim ini sudah terpenuhi dan mungkin bagi teman-teman ada yang belum bisa mengikuti, kami akan membuka gelombang kedua. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, demikianlah yang dapat kami sampaikan untuk kegiatan seminar dan workshop ini. Kami tetap memohon arahan dan dukungan dari berbagai pihak untuk dapat terselenggaranya daripada kegiatan atau program medical wellness di Bali ini yang sudah menjadi komitmen kita bersama untuk kita jalankan secara bertahap. Sekian dan terima kasih. Om Santi 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 Om. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Hadirin yang kami hormati, acara selanjutnya adalah sambutan dari staf khusus Menteri Kesehatan Bidang Ketahanan Resiliensi Industri Obat dan Alat Kesehatan Kementerian Kesehatan Republik Indonesia. Kepada yang terhormat Bapak Profesor Dr. Laksono Trisnantoro, M.Sc, Ph.D, kami silakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi asosiasi ada mungkin dan sendiri kita mengajukan jadi mengajar waktu itu kabel dari pertemuan itu di bulan lalu kita meetingnya itu komentar dengan nah hari ini kita laku swasta ya, di BMTA ya, kemudian mensupport secara teknis dan kita punya tamu kita bisa objek dari Summit. So from Summit is experience programs from you from Australia. They have departments in Jaya, and they have for 6 or 7 sites, many sites. And but this, so you know, here in the platform stuff, partnership or leaders of the apartment must. But this will try to be open like a new point of our in this year. And our is integrated in China. This will have this. Jadi pertemuan nasional bagaimana mungkin dari jantung wisata Indonesia itu akan masukan dari seorang ahli medical organization yang tidak ada pintu. Oke, di sebagai itu ada penyusunan tapi yang terakhir kemudian dari swasta ya, ada pemilik pemerintah.
Aku sih mas.
Ini plus akan bicara mengenai
ini atasnya
ini yang sangat penting adalah proses eksekusi.
Nggak pakai sama.
Ya. Nah, ini yang satu hal yang sampai kita berubah bahwa semuanya harus operasional dan kriteria bisnis itu masuk akal. Artinya masuk akal kan? Ownernya tidak komplain kenapa dikerjakan di sesuatu yang malah itu merugikan. Jadi betul-betul tidak menggunakan prinsip karena itu temanya adalah itu produk medical device. Jadi produk ini bukan harus harus digunakan dalam bisnis kita yang sustain dan jangka panjang terus berkembang dan yang sangat penting bagi bangsa kita. Kita akan menjadi salah satu dari pelaku bisnis ini di dunia. Memang nanti Pak akan masuk pada bentuk dari segmen yang mungkin foster atau gastar, karena segmen di Bali itu ada di Laporan yang pemerintah dengan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sampai dan sudah ada style dari nah, Pak mungkin akan menyatakan pemerintah yang 5. Nah, tapi untuk asal bisa mungkin kan nggak bisa ya kita artinya ini sekali lagi ini sebuah opening penggunaan dari apa yang sudah di pasar. Tapi ini yang saya sampaikan semoga ini semua dapat dipakai untuk maju dan kita berharap dari ada banyak strategi ya. Itu kalau ini bisa lebih dari 5 yang bisa tahun oleh pasar 10 menjadi luar Bali kita dari para Gede dan studi 250 peserta online ya. Saya kira dari Jakarta ada, dari Sumatera ada, dari Kalimantan ada, Sulawesi juga dan ada orang juga akan ada pusat-pusat medical wellness yang bisnisnya adalah di berbagai resort di Indonesia dan masih Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hadirin sekalian, demikianlah sambutan dari staf khusus Menteri Kesehatan Residensi Industri Obat dan Alat Kesehatan ke Republik Indonesia. Maka di belakang kita ada acara seminar kali ini yang akan dimoderatori oleh Bapak Dr. Made Indra Wijaya, Ph.D. di PH. Kepada Bapak Dr. Indra, kami silakan untuk memulai seminar.
Thank you so much. Terima kasih. Om Swastiastu. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Salam alaikum. Now we are entering the seminar session. We are lucky today because we have a speaker, a woman speaker, Mr. Weigl. He is not only an expert in medical wellness, he is also.
Dok, suaranya nggak jelas, Dok. Sayup-sayup.
Ya, apa mic-nya? Kalau mic-nya sebenarnya, I really apologize for that. We have a different on the volume. Hopefully you can hear us much better. Can you hear us?
Gimana?
Okay, let us begin.
Mau dicapai?
Now we are entering the main session. This is the seminar about the mental wellness. We are lucky today because we have a renowned speaker from Wiryana. He is not merely an expert on medical wellness. He is also a regional managing director of Internasional. So he is a practitioner. His background is M.Sc, as well as postgraduate diploma in healthcare management. Without further ado, I invite Mr. Weigl to deliver the lecture or the sharing session.
Is it working?
Yes, yes. We will have about 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then we'll start.
Sure. Good. That's me. Selamat pagi. It's good to be back to Bali. That's been fun. I'm also very thankful for the invitation. The Medical Tourism Association or the Bali Tourism Association. I'm excited to be part of that push to drive medical tourism in Bali. Big thanks to Professor Laksono to really drive this and appreciate it. So thanks to you as well. Good. Today's about, I have two sections. On the first one, I will explore why we think it's the right thing to medical wellness, health, practice. And the second one is focusing on service concept, and it's a business aspect, which will hopefully make it easier to move in space. Just a show of hands, who's working in healthcare and who's working in hospitality here? Healthcare. Mostly, right? Is anyone working in hospitality? Yeah, so here. Good. Also, welcome to our audience online. 200 people joining, so that's great as well. I would like to start with this slide, and to me, this is the essence of what we are trying to achieve here. Preventive health and lifestyle, I will explain the terms soon, but what you see here is my roads, right? On the left, this is the road to disease, and on the right, this is the road to longevity health. The road to disease is usually dotted with hospitals and healthcare facilities. You see that picture, as these things go to hospital, right? The road to longevity usually is left to hospitality, hotels, wellness centers, fitness centers, and other operators. So we really, as healthcare providers, have paid too much attention on road to disease rather than road to longevity and health. And wellness, here is change that paradigm to move forward our health onto this goal of health and longevity. This is really the objective here. Here's how we have been developing this concept now for 5 years here on Weigl. And personally, I did 50 years before we came along. Health becomes much more important, right? You have a different outlook on health, your health behavior changes, and likely are taking much better care of emotional, physical, mental health. Usually, healthcare takes care of your physical health, sometimes of your mental health, but completely separated health. Very little about your emotional health, very little about your spiritual. And mental wellness actually is trying to those aspects. Talking, right, yesterday as well, Bali is well placed in terms of spiritual health. Okay, 3 objectives for today. First objective really is to demonstrate that we as healthcare providers have not done good enough to tackle all the healthcare challenges there are. So we have not done good enough in maintaining historical health, right? This is the first objective I want to demonstrate. Second is to reinforce that prevention is really the key to tackle all those healthcare challenges. And objective number 3 is to make the case that healthcare in combination with hospitality, so with hotels, is actually well equipped to provide preventive care and wellness, and that it's a profitable business model. Because eventually, private sector has to be sustainable. So those are the three main objectives. Moving on. This is just something I picked up yesterday. I put together, this is from May 23. I'm sure the numbers, the previous pre-COVID years were much higher. Last year, Bali saw around 4 million tourists. It's picking up, fortunately, so that's very positive. For medical wellness, it's always important to actually look at where do your clients come from, right? Because the clients are obviously the ones to whom you're catering. So my base is Bangkok mostly, so Thailand, and we have a very similar composition of tourism. So, but yours is even stronger on Australia, right? They roughly have 1/4 of your foreign visitors. And then number two, I believe, is India now, China, the US, the UK. So in terms of developing your medical wellness offerings, as tourism specialists, you would always know where your clients come from. Care, think in terms of patients, right? So we don't really wear this tourism hat. So we need to be more service-minded, more marketing-minded in order to know, okay, moving into medical tourism, medical wellness, these are our clients. This is the first mindset change. We don't talk about patients anymore, but clients. Yeah? So these are your clients from Australia, from China, from India, and so on. And just listen to BBC yesterday. You know, there was a big global study on cancer, right? I'm not sure if anyone has come across it. They just found out that cancer in the age group of 14 to 49 has increased big time. That is very unique. They still don't know what are the root causes, but they see a strong association with obesity. So obesity is not really something you need to treat in a hospital. There's many lifestyle ways how you can treat it. So obesity actually plays into our field of medical wellness. We use these terms interchangeably. Preventive medicine, lifestyle medicine, medical wellness. I just want to get some clarity around it. So preventive medicine is really dealing with healthy people. Yeah, they may have some risk factors. So they may be obese, they may have higher blood pressure, they have risk factors, but they have diseases, they are not sick. Okay? And the idea here is to maintain their health. So that's what preventive medicine is doing. Lifestyle medicine, on the other hand, is actually dealing with already have already health conditions. But what's interesting between preventive and lifestyle medicine is that we are very much using the same diagnostic, screening, and therapeutic measures. So if you look at the health interventions we are using in preventive medicine and lifestyle medicine, they are very much the same. It's all about physical activity, it's about sleep, it's about nutrition, it's about emotional health, and of course, medication comes in. Yeah, for example, in order to to control your blood pressure. But the two approach things from different angles, healthy versus already a little sick, but very much using the same tools. And medical wellness is now adding the wellness to this mix. So meaning we are adding the massages, the yogas, and all those wellness activities, which you already see very prevalent in Bali. Yeah, Bali has built a very strong reputation in wellness. If you combine the three, you really get this medical wellness concept. And I think that's my message. It's not so much about the terms, it's about what you do. So it is our belief that if you combine the three philosophies or the three disciplines, you get this unique combination to really tackle 80% of the lifestyle, the non-communicable diseases very effectively. And that's what eventually this concept is about. So fortunately, things have changed. This is from 2000, and I think the quote is spot on. And that's why it has always been a little difficult to give prevention the traction it actually deserved. Most of the benefits still lie in the future, right? Prevention. So if we are healthy, we are healthy. We don't feel the disease. But the point now is that we can actually make those benefits tangible, right? So think about all the wearables you have. We are now able to track you, to see your biomarkers, to measure them through wearables. So almost in real time, you can see, have you made progress in terms of your health biomarkers? And that's this kind of instant gratification world we live in now. It's important for us to measure, to see. In the past, this was not possible. So I think that's a big game changer. People want to see progress. They want to measure, they like evidence, they like science. And this is now technologically possible. So it's a big game changer. The other thing is that both governments and insurances, private and public health insurances, have actually stepped up, and they are now providing better reimbursements in terms of checkups. They're providing reward schemes. If you look at what Singapore is doing, right, in giving discounts to people who take 10,000 steps a day, for example, so they are trying to reward healthy behavior. Or there's a lot of education around now. And fortunately, COVID, all its negative outcomes, has played in our favor as well. Yeah, it has added this increased urge to live healthier, which helps us to actually push this concept. Why are we doing this? And to me, this slide is really very impactful. So undoubtedly, healthcare has been medicine has been extremely successful, right, to bring down mortality rates. You see this for the past 100 years, mortality rates have gone down. And this is largely due to antibiotics and sanitation. But, next one, yeah. If you take away the infectious diseases, right, antibiotic sanitation really managed to bring down infectious diseases. If you take away the infectious diseases, you see the white line here? It's almost steady, and those are the non-communicable diseases. So the story which tells us is that in terms of non-communicable diseases, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and so forth, we have been far less successful. And that's the point I wanted to make is, as healthcare providers, we have not done good enough. And we need to think about ways how we can actually tackle those lifestyle diseases which are progressing and progressing. So I think that is a very important justification for all of us to move much stronger into prevention and medical wellness. And those are just a few highlights. You all know them. We have roughly 500 million people living with diabetes. Those don't include those undiagnosed, and those don't include those people with pre-diabetes, right? There's roughly another 10% of the world population living with pre-diabetes. So, and that's a good example. The one with diabetes, right? They would be part of lifestyle medicine, right? They have developed a medical condition and they would be treated. The ones with pre-diabetes should actually come out medicine.
Mas Anggun.
For
Buat
them,
apa lagi Mas?
it's actually we work and
Mari Mas.
the diabetes stage.
Tidak ada apa ya?
So we have diabetes, we have obesity as a serious health challenge, we have aging with over 1 billion people and steadily increasing. Obviously, with age comes a much bigger disease burden. We have 25% roughly don't get enough physical activity. Personally, I think percentage is much higher. And last but not least, we have a lot of people who get stressed and anxious. Yeah, almost 2/3 say they're stressed and anxious. So that's what we're dealing with. And the answers to those problems not only lie in conventional medicine, but also, let's say, in preventive and lifestyle health medicine. And those diseases are associated, related, or caused by risk factors, right? And this is from the global study of global burden of disease. So you can actually see the change here. There are three groups of risks: the metabolic risks, the environmental risks, and the behavioral risks. The metabolic risks are those which essentially drive the whole lifestyle diseases. Yeah, they are highlighted in orange. So starting from high blood pressure, high fasting plasma glucose, high BMI, high LDL, kidney dysfunction, you see they have been all on the rise. Three categories. The only category which increased overall and consistently is the metabolic risks. All the other groups actually decreased, with the exception of alcohol use, still going up, and air pollution. Air pollution as an environmental risk is a very serious risk, has been going up as a risk, but the risk group as such has actually decreased. So the story which tells us here is that the metabolic risks are really increasing at an alarming rate. And I've just picked two examples here, right? And you are better qualified than I am as a doctor. If we look at cardiovascular disease, and if we look at dementia or diabetes, it is always the same risk factors showing up. It's the metabolic risks. They just show up in a different composition, yeah, or in a different strength. So this tells us if we work against those risk factors, we would actually achieve much better health outcomes. You cannot read it, but yeah, it's hard to read, but anyway, you will see, you will get the presentation. So it also shows the same risk factors here on your right, which is dementia. Okay. And now looking at the flip side, and that's something I'm very excited and passionate about, it's protective factors. In medicine, we have looked so much at risk factors, right? WHO, it's all about risk factors, causes of disease, and so forth. We hear very little about the power of protective factors. Protective factors are characteristics which have the ability to either reduce a negative health outcome, or it has the ability to work against the risk factor, yeah, to reduce the impact of a risk factor. Yeah, for example, if you look at high blood pressure as a risk factor, we know that if you exercise, your high blood pressure would go down, right, by a notch. That's what a protective factor can do. But a protective factor can actually do much more. It can help you to avoid certain risk factors in the first place. And the protective factors, we are all aware, right? They're not rocket science. It's nutrition, it's physical activity,
stress management, it's sleep, it's social connections and emotional health, and it's obviously avoiding risky behavior like smoking, drinking alcohol. So if you see those protective factors, you don't think you have to necessarily go to a hospital, right, to get that type of medicine. You can actually do this very well in a setup like here. And I think that's the message we want to drive today, that places, resorts, locations in Bali, like this resort, can actually very well cater for these protective factors. So we are all working in a healthcare continuum, and what we do here is actually part of the primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. So this is important to understand that medical wellness happens in primary and secondary prevention, right? Primary prevention being very much wellness. What's added in the secondary prevention is all the diagnostics, all the screenings. So we get all the measurements in order to either refer someone to the acute hospital setting if there is a medical condition, or we find some risk factors which we can work on in preventive medicine, lifestyle medicine, that this person can actually be, let's say, taken care of in a medical wellness setting. So that's what's happening in primary and secondary prevention. Tertiary prevention is rehabilitation. So somebody has been treated, for example, for cardiovascular disease or stroke, or for joint replacement, goes into rehabilitation and restores the function. So we also see that as prevention, but there has been an acute episode before. That's kind of the difference. And I just want to share with you our expertise here. So we as VAMED, we are mostly active in primary, secondary prevention, which is well-being, detecting problems, and restoring function. So as Professor Laksono mentioned, we have slightly more wellness facilities. We have 11 medical wellness facilities in Austria and Germany under the brand of VAMED Vitality World. And we see around 3 million visitors every year. Here you need to know that the 3 million visitors are not necessarily all staying in our resort. So those are also day visitors. Yeah, so that's why the numbers is so extremely high. And those are just some images. I just want to point out here we have, this is a women's only wellness resort. So only for women. We have struggled to get the concept right for many years. And I think that's a lesson I want to, or a takeaway I want to pass on to you. You may not always get it right in the first place. So you're all at different points, your, let's say, strategic development now. So you may have to trial and test and make errors in order to then find your right spot. We don't always find it immediately, and the women's health is a good example. It took us many years to find the right positioning and the right service plan. And then we move on to our, let's say, tertiary competency. So we also do rehabilitation, which is more medical. Yeah, so we treat patients, neurological, orthopedic, oncological patients after their treatment. So they come to see us, and then they go through rehabilitation with them for 30 or 60 days. We have over 60 rehab centers in Europe, 8,200 beds. So we are one of the top 3 players here in Europe. And here are a few examples. And tertiary prevention connects very well with primary and secondary prevention, right? Because this usually is all about getting someone back to health and well-being. So we are actually trying to achieve the same objective as in primary and secondary prevention. So we're using a lot of physical activity, a lot of psychological, mental health tools. So that's why it really blends well together. So before the break, I would like to make a few points. We're now moving on to the market side. Yeah, now we are knowing why are we doing it. Yeah, healthcare wise, because you need to be able to justify, right, this strategic move into medical wellness from a healthcare perspective. From a market perspective, we certainly know that healthcare matters more than ever. Yeah, and COVID has really played into our field here. And this is a good example if we look at here, right? We are at the intersection of healthcare, tourism, and wellness. In order to be successful in medical wellness, you need to understand the three segments. So I just highlighted a few, let's say, key drivers. So for example, if you look at tourism, a lot of countries here in the region are tourism heavyweights, right? Like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines. I mean, we heavily depend on tourism. But all other countries, yeah, for example, like Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, they have made a name for themselves in terms of medical tourism. So you have a lot of tourists going to these countries for medical tourism. So I would say this is where Bali still has a shortcoming, right? Globally, you're not recognized yet as a healthcare tourism destination. You are very well recognized as a tourism destination and as a wellness destination. So those two factors are already well in place. In terms of the healthcare tourism, I would say there's still a bit to catch up with places like Thailand, yeah, or Singapore, for that sake. Tourism drives the market in big time. What we see is that hospitality operators are now moving into healthcare. I'm not sure how much you have seen this in Bali, but in the region, we see that hotels are trying to go away from just spa operations and are moving into wellness and medical wellness, and so do property developers. Yeah, because they see healthcare as an opportunity to increase their revenue base and making recurring revenues. I think wellness, we all know the trends. It's growing big time. It's growing much faster than the overall global growth. 7 trillion in 2025, so it's big numbers. Wellness offers an alternative to complementary and the complementary approach to medicine. And what I mentioned is that nowadays it's much more important that people see evidence. Why are they doing it, right? The evidence-based and the scientific approach to wellness has become a much stronger driver in wellness. And in terms of healthcare, already mentioned that governments and insurers are putting a lot more attention to preventive medicine in order to help them. And medical tourism is a key driver. Yep. Sorry, I moved the slides. Hold on, we can move on. And it's very hard to read here, but we actually asked a marketing agency to also look at the health trends in terms of wellness and healthcare. And those are just a few examples. From sick care to well care, we have already heard. Wellness is more than a trend. Yeah, it really is a way to help improve health conditions and tackle or improve health outcomes. Medical tourism maintains its strength, so we have 12 to 14 million travelers every year going abroad for medical reasons. It's more evidence-based treatments. What's important as well is medical wellness drives profitability. Yeah, and if you can read the numbers here, first of all, with medical wellness, you have a much longer length of stay, right? Your usual in hospitality, your usual tourist depends on where the tourist comes from and which destination, but you may have 3 days. In medical wellness, you have an average of 7 to 8 days. So you have a much longer length of stay, plus your average revenue per available room is much higher than in wellness or in just hospitality. Yeah, it's 35 to 40% higher. So, as I mentioned before, it's also making the case that it's a good business model. So you can see higher profitability, yeah, when you go into medical wellness. And obviously there has been a big technological drive, telehealth, remote care. I will explain to you in the second part how we are making use of technology and telehealth. But what it also helps with is you don't need to have all the specialists sitting in your resorts, right? You can actually use this as a very good way to bring in specialists. For example, you need an oncologist, yeah, but you're not going to have a full-time oncologist in your resort. So you can actually bring this expert in by e-consultation. So it's a very elegant way to save costs. And I will explain this model in the second part. Good. Yeah, it's very hard to read. Next slide. But this is a very strategic slide. So we did a competitive analysis, right? And how hospitality in particular developed in terms of what they are providing in terms of healthcare or health-related services is very much what you see on your left hand, wellness spa, right? Almost every hospitality provider has a spa, yeah, and it's a good revenue earner. And then from there on, we moved into wellness retreats, more holistic retreats, integrated functional medicine, and we as a healthcare provider, so hospitality comes in from the right-hand side, right? That's where the expertise of hospitality is. While healthcare operators, they come in on the right-hand side, right? Because we have healthcare expertise. And property developers actually can enter from either side. So now the idea here is, and that's why we're having this joint session, is to bring hospitality and healthcare together. Clearly, wellness clients and tourists are moving away from wellness spa along this continuum. Yeah, they're expecting more evidence-based, more scientific treatments, including all the diagnostics. So this is a very important trend. And so we have done this global analysis, and you can't read the individual dots here. But for example, Como Shambhala, right, which would be in Bali, is right here. So we see this as a holistic offering. Up here, it's going from, let's say, 4-star plus up to the luxury segment. So you don't see the 4-star below on this matrix. What it also shows you that in the top right corner, you have all the successful medical wellness resorts, mostly in Europe. If you have heard of Laporan, Gede, Shah Wellness Clinics, Patra, Lanzerhof, they are all in this luxury segment, very successful financially, but also medically. And the way we have practiced wellness here out in Southeast Asia is more on the wellness retreat, the holistic retreat, but slowly moving into integrative medicine. The difference here, obviously, it's blurry, it's not clear lines, but once you move into integrative medicine, you have doctors, you have nursing, right, supervising the guests. I think that's the main difference. You will see medical personnel, and the more you move into integrative preventive medicine, the more diagnostics you have. You have diagnostic equipment, you run a lot of lab work. So, and that goes back to my initial point. You all start at a different place at the moment. So what I'm saying is not necessarily you should all move into, let's say, the top left, right? Because this is luxury and this is preventive medicine, very medical. So for you, the right move may be to move, let's say, 4-star into holistic or integrative medicine as a first step. As a second step, then move into preventive medicine, and you may go more luxury, right? It really depends on what is your strategic direction. And that is something we can discuss either in sessions later or in the Q&A later.
3 more minutes.
Yeah.
3 more minutes.
Okay. So what we found is, for us, the sweet spot is actually not luxury, but it's probably 4-star minus to 5-star plus. Yeah, you see this gray area, target positioning. That's where we think is the sweet spot for a medical wellness resort out here in Southeast Asia. So our target is to make medical wellness more affordable and more accessible. So we don't want to make it as luxury as, let's say, the ones in Europe. So we want to decrease it a notch, but also at the same time we want to make it more medical. Yeah, so we want to add more diagnostic, more screenings into the mix, and most importantly, add healthcare professionals and other professionals. Yeah, I think that's really the key. So medical wellness is medically supervised. Yeah, and I think that's the main difference to just doing wellness. So you have a medical team supervising the guest. Just giving you a few examples here. So we actually analyzed a lot more, but those are some of the big players. Something which came up in Bangkok just last year is Raksa, which is a venture between Bumrungrad Hospital and the project developer. Very interesting concept, very integrated, very medical, but very expensive. Yeah, so we think the price point is too high. Chivasom, I don't know, does anyone know Chivasom? It's one of the pioneers in wellness, also close to Bangkok. Excellent in terms of wellness, but they have kind of missed the train to rejuvenate their concept, to go more medical. Miskaran, and here you can also see the data spends, and I think that's interesting for you. So they vary between roughly 20,000, Thai baht, 20,000 Thai baht would be, let's say, 500 euro, 600 US, around that. So Raksa would be 2,000 USD, for example. Chivasom, 1,000 USD. Chino, 1,000 USD. But if you look at Clinique La Prairie, for example, this is around 5,000 USD. So you have a very different range in terms of pricing. And if we continue, yes, that's hard to read, but anyway, you will get the slides here. And what I would like you to do is, we have actually listed out the strengths and the weaknesses. And what's important here is there is no right or wrong concept. They're just doing it differently. Yeah, and so will you. So we have analyzed it. We have looked at location. We've looked at service offerings, at the staffing, at the pricing, what they do well and what they do not so well. And you can have your own analysis and see what may work best for you. So, for example, Raksa is very clinical. They are balancing the clinical with the wellness very well. But the location is a little off, and the pricing, in our opinion, is too high to attract the clientele. Yeah, so that's where we would see the improvement. Chivasom, as I mentioned, one of the wellness pioneers, but they have kind of missed the train to modernize themselves. Yeah, they're still very much operating wellness like they did 20 years ago. A very interesting case study. And in my team, for example, we have people from Chivasom, we have people from Shah Wellness Clinics working with us. So we have all this expertise. Miskawan, very medically focused. They also go on cancer treatments, alternative cancer treatments, but the hospitality side is very weak. But they are a new player. Chenot has a very, very long tradition. But for example, as a weakness, we notice they're offering Chinese medicine in their brochure, but they haven't really integrated it into the concept. Yeah. So Shah Wellness Clinic, it even carries the name clinic, a very strong clinical concept. They place a lot of emphasis on food and education. And I think there's one more slide here. Yeah, which gives you some more ideas in terms of strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, I think that's where I would like to finish the first session. Going back to, can we just go back? No, go back to the metrics, two, three more. Here, yeah. To me, this is one of the key slides. If you want to move into medical wellness or integrative care, what's important is that you position yourself well. You need to have a very clear profile of people, and that's why I made the point before. You need to know who your people are, where they come from. You need to have a very clear profile. Sometimes, and for example, Shah Wellness Clinics, for the first 5 years, they were struggling because people didn't know, is this now a resort or is it a clinic? So later on, they added the term clinic, what we call a descriptor, and I will talk about branding later. And then people realized, okay, this is actually a medical wellness offering. So you don't want to confuse your client. If you're a hotel, you're a hotel, right? But if you're a medical wellness resort, people need to know that's who you are. You must have a very clear profile, a very clear positioning. Okay, I would like to leave it with that for now. In the next session, we go more into the service concept and a bit into the business side. And I think it's up for Q&A, right? And over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Weigl. So we stop right here. There will be another session after the break. Now we are open for discussion. For this first session, we are talking about lifestyle health and prevention concept. Perhaps there is one or two questions from the audience here, because I noticed that there is no question online. Perhaps, okay, maybe Olivia, you should do us a favor, giving a mic to the hospital director of Arishanti Hospital. He is studying in India, also studying about alternative medicine. Yes, Christoph Weigl, an expert and practitioner in medical practice. Mr. Weigl. Chris. Yeah, okay. Mr. Chris. My name is Oka. I'm a doctor, director of Arishanti Hospital. We already established alternative medicine, acupuncture, acupressure, Balinese massage, like that. Also, Eva in our hospital. We already promote to village. The people in the village, and they already come to the hospital to seek traditional medicine. My question.
But this, what you said before, I want to know about your country or Europe. Is it start from the people in communities that they are seeking wellness, or someone or some organization or government promote this concept at the beginning? Because in this place in Bali, in the past, we have medicine man we call Wiryana. When we sick, I was a child when I was sick. We'll go to my grandfather. Grandfather is one of my village, or we go to pediatrician, two kind of medicine man. Right? And then after that, near this year, we will not go to medicine man anymore. We mostly we go to doctor. Then we in our hospital try to make promotion again to receive or welcome the traditional approach of how to get healthy like that. What about our country? If like in Bali, there were medicine men, we go to doctor, and then we have to hard work to promote again the medicine man like that. Because if this is new in your country, we will know about that. But if there was tradition about medicine man in your country, in Europe, and then become medical wellness, what is the difference between country that have tradition, medicine man tradition, and country with totally allopathic system? The second question. You said before in your slide, in the presentation about three circle, yeah, tourism, medical, and then tourism, wellness trend, and and the other, health. How if there is no tradition about that in the past in your country, how to create this collaboration? How the government or maybe the people, community, how to start this, and they go to hospital, join the complementary alternative, become integrative system in hospital, modern hospital. Ask about that, and how people go to hospital and they openly seek the alternative or complementary system, or the doctor allopathic doctor openly make a referral, please go to alternative doctor or medicine. How to create your country or Europe? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Interesting question. There are two questions. Perhaps you can answer directly.
Sure. First one. So certainly in the Western context, we don't have medicine man. I think what comes closest is the family GP, right? The family practitioner, which really goes back 100, 200 years. I think that's what comes closest to, let's say, at least the more recent way of how we practice healthcare. I think the main difference is that in the Western context, we have very strong social security driven systems, right? So we have systems which finance healthcare and which finance health and well-being of the people. And I know for Asians, it sounds crazy, but these systems have actually financed wellness for over 100 years. So, for example, my sister, she can every year apply for preventive treatments under the Social Security program. So she can go for 1 or 2 weeks into a preventative medicine resort. It's paid, it's Social Security funded, while she has some risk factors, but she doesn't have a medical condition, right? So I think the point here is that in these systems, there is a luxury built in that prevention is already partially funded. Yeah? So, and you may know this from many movies, right, that rich British, guys go into the Alps and seek some treatments, in particular, water-based treatments, right, or Kneippkur, all these kind of wellness treatments that dates back 100 or 200 years. So this kind of treatment is very strongly ingrained into our culture. So it's partially security funded, social security or tax funded. And if it's not, then it's in the mindset of people that they would actually pay this out of their pocket. And so if you look into, let's say, what we are operating in Central Europe mostly, those are privately funded resorts, so Social Security does not pay, but people come there and they stay there either just for the day or they come here for 3, 4, 5, 6 days. They pay out of pocket. It works because the mindset has been created over 100 years that this is good for you, right? It's kind of a preventive treatment. It helps you to maintain healthy. So in a way, that's it's a lucky coincidence that 100, 200 years ago, our forefathers were visionary enough to kind of build that into the system. On the other hand, I would say that Bali has been fortunate enough that you're already attracting exactly those people who want to look after themselves, right? Who want to take care of their health. Not all of them. We also have the younger segment, right? Who come here for other reasons. But let's say you have a lot of target clientele who come here for exactly those reasons, who want to look after their health and well-being. And this has now moved from just wellness into more medical. Yeah. Does this answer your first question? Yeah? Yes, right. And this relationship between healthcare and tourism and wellness. In the European context, for example, we have very strong tourism boards. And they have been, let's say, strategic enough to actually invite, in particular, wellness players, but also healthcare players into the equation. Exactly what you're doing now. Yeah. You have a very strong tourism association, I believe. And pulling this now together, that's what these countries have done 20, 30 years back, right? So tourism has developed in a very strategic manner, yeah, with a lot of foresight. If I can give you the example of Thailand, Thailand, the best out here in Asia. Most of these concepts have developed individually, yeah. So there was not really a strong strategic push by the government. Of late, Thailand is trying to work strategically, but the medical side is actually stronger than the tourism side in terms of driving these concepts. So I'm not sure you have followed, but we have defined the number of medical hubs, wellness hubs, right, along the way in the north, in the south, and that's where these associations collaborate. But historically, these concepts were all developed individually, yeah, without very much strategic direction or support from the government or from any associations. Yeah, but Chivasong, for example, which to me is a very good example, the person who owns Chivasong is also the owner or is also the president of the tourism association in that region. So there is a strong collaboration now between wellness and tourism as well.
Yeah, maybe other participants, maybe later on we'll give you another opportunity. Maybe, thank you so much, Mr. Weigl. So maybe there is other participant who would like to ask a question. We will have the second session after this, so you can ask again about it. So basically, we cannot expect collaboration just like in medical tourism. You know the difference between medical tourism and wellness tourism. The problem here is that for medical tourism, let's say for the surgery, it will be covered by the health insurance. But for the medical wellness, the problem is it's really difficult to find the coverage from the insurance, and that is the reason why it's quite challenging. But just because it is challenging doesn't mean that it will not affect it sooner or later. Because when we start doing the medical wellness, insurers have to think twice. Remember that in 2000, just like in your slide, even the Secretary General of WHO stated that it is difficult to prove that preventive medicine is beneficial because you cannot prove the impact. Unlike surgery, for example, you can see if there is a broken fracture, you do something about it and the bone heal. But for the medical wellness, the impact is at a decade. But that was 23 years ago. Later on, they will be changed, and we have to start the change. And we cannot wait for the collaboration. We have to make it happen. That's what I thought, and that's why I'm really, really happy because we started by doing the kicking off last month, and this is the sequel, which is good because we have been discussing here. Dr. Jaya also here. We have been discussing since 2010. Nothing happened. So by doing this, sooner rather than later, everybody will get involved because there is no other way of doing the preventive medicine to minimize the health expenses in the near future. I think for the first session, we can end here because time is already 24:10. We'll have a break for about 10 minutes. And after that, we will continue with the second session. And Mr. Weigl will present another topic, which is much more interesting because it has to do with the business plan, which is the key topic in this seminar. Thank you. I will return this to Madam MC.
Baik, terima kasih kami sampaikan. Baiklah Bapak Ibu hadirin, acara kita jeda sejenak ya. Kita akan melakukan coffee break, bisa dinikmati di sebelah belakang hadirin sekalian ya. Untuk menikmati coffee break dan dimohonkan untuk menikmati coffee break di dalam ruangan ini karena waktu untuk coffee break hanyalah 15 menit. Jadi setelah ini akan kita lanjutkan kepada seminar yang 2. Terima kasih. Sebelum kita coffee break, kita beri tepuk tangan sekali lagi untuk workshop. Ya, kami persilakan untuk mengambil coffee break yang sudah disediakan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can start.
Yeah. Good. So the way we picture the next generation of preventive health resort, right, is not in a hospital setting. You always need to picture a pristine place, a resort setting like in Bali, like in Phuket, like in Langkawi or Philippine Islands. That's where we see preventive health, medical wellness happening in the future. So we're moving away from the hospital setting to a more conducive environment. What's also a major mindset shift is obviously we are moving away from calling our patients, but we actually calling them guests, consumers, right? Like in hospitality. Why is that? Because our target clientele in medical wellness is the healthy person, right? It's the healthy individual. We talked about age groups before, so while it's actually open-ended, but our primary target is the 40-year plus healthy individual. When I say healthy, I don't mean there are no risk factors present. There are risk factors, for example, like somebody is obese, somebody has higher blood pressure, or let's say the lipid profile is not in order. But those are risk factors which we can handle in our medical wellness setting. So we are not dealing with a patient who has health conditions. And I think that's a major differentiator, and that's where a lot of hospitals and the medical community as such struggles, yeah, because it's really a mindset change. If we look at the next slide, so And now we are moving into the concept. So it's very important that we do a clinical risk assessment. So either prior to someone coming into the resort or upon arrival at the resort, we are doing this clinical assessment. What this clinical assessment does, it's actually looking at lifestyle risks, it looks at predispositions, yeah, genetic factors, it looks at health conditions. If the risk assessment tells us that the risk profile is too high, we are not accepting this person in our medical wellness resort. What are we doing with this person? Either if we are doing it pre-arrival, we tell this person, we are not able to help you in our resort because you should actually go to a hospital. You have an acute disease. We don't have the diagnostics and the therapeutics to help you. If the risk assessment is done on site, we will tell the person, we refer you out to a hospital, to an acute setting. And I think that is very critical in terms of you managing your clinical risks. We know that hospitality, hotels, hotel providers, the biggest fear is that they are dealing with sick patients, and they run into all sorts of clinical problems. So the risk assessment is so crucial in order to avoid those problems. It doesn't mean no problem will occur along a guest's journey, but we are trying to reduce it from 50% to 1%. Yeah, like in a hotel setting, someone goes to a gym, has a cardiac arrest, it can happen anytime. But actually, in a medical wellness resort, we are much better prepared to deal with such a situation. We have the clinical protocols in place for emergency procedures. We have clinical staff. So that's a very important piece. On the one hand, to manage your risks. On the other hand, if you deal with hospitality providers, hotels, they will always ask you, what's the clinical risk involved? Yeah, going into, remember that continuum going from spa to preventive medicine. In spa, there's literally no risk, right? Well, they know if you go into preventive medicine, there are clinical risks. You need to tell them, first of all, there's very little risk because we don't get high risk people into our resort. Secondly, if there are any remaining risks, we manage them well because we got the team, we got the equipment, we got the protocols. Very crucial. The 4-phase delivery model is important for 2 reasons. One, in order to ensure sustainable health outcomes. And this would be, let's say, my critique at the conventional system, right? We check into a hospital, we get treated, we check out. The aftercare is lacking oftentimes. So we don't have this lifelong journey. So health outcomes can be better managed if we have a full cycle. The other one is actually business driven. If you have a 4-phase model, you can manage the guest from A to Z. You can manage them from pre-arrival to post-arrival. And I will explain this very crucial model to you in more detail. Pre-arrival remote assessment. So what we do here is that somebody signs up for your resort, right? So there will be, and that's where also the teleconsultations, the digital technology comes in. We will set up online meetings, we will do remote examinations, we will look at the medical history of that guest. Surveys will be filled out, so we will have medical information on that guest. So the initial screenings and assessments will be done remotely. Then we will send the guest a pack, an info pack, so the guest is well informed, a about what's going to happen in the resort. And usually, based on the initial interview, the guest will then pick his or her preference, a health program. We call them health journeys, right? Are you interested in improving your metabolic syndrome? Are you interested in losing weight? Are you interested in performance improvement? So, according to the guest's preferences, he or she will pick the health program. This is happening in the pre-arrival phase. And then we go on site into the resort. And this is really where all the magic starts, I would say. So this is where the guest will then undergo comprehensive diagnostics and screenings. And I will show you which ones those are. And from the diagnostic and screening stage, the person will then move through the health journeys. So the diagnostic phase is the first part of the health journey. The health journey usually lasts 7 to 14 days. And that's where the much longer length of stay comes in for you as an operator. So the in-house experience then concludes with a final evaluation, a final assessment, and then we let the guest go. So if you think about your hospital, your healthcare experience, right? The patient leaves the hospital, and in the past there was very, very little follow-up. Unless in the village it was different, or as a GP, right, you made your follow-up calls, but generally there was not much continuity of care. And I think that's one of the shortcomings of all our healthcare systems across the world. So here the idea is that we use all the digital technology to actually stay in touch with our guests. So we do monitoring. We monitor the guests through wearables and other technologies, so we are able to get measurements from the guest, and we can actually continue to monitor what we have started in the resort along the guest's journey. So we will monitor, we will evaluate, and we will follow up. And the idea here is that we actually create the guest who's not a one-time guest, but who's a loyal, repeat customer. So, and that's where the engagement comes in, right? If you just see your client as a one-time and you don't stay in touch along these 4 phases, you will lose the engagement. The digital technology gives you the opportunity to engage with your client all the way through. And hopefully, after you've done the reassessments, the reevaluations, the follow-ups, the client will come back to your resort on a 6-monthly, on a yearly basis, depends on how much they like it, how crazy they are about preventive health and so forth. But you create this circle of engagement, which, from a health outcome point of view, this really drives your health outcomes. I will show you a slide on how much we can achieve within 2 weeks, right? The outcome is limited. You can't work magic within 2 weeks, but you can already, let's say, start the journey. The really important piece in terms of health outcomes happens in phases 3 and 4. So you need to be engaging with the client to achieve better health outcomes. And I think as healthcare professionals, right, we talked about ethics before, that's what we are really interested in, right? We don't want to take anything away from medicine and from healthcare, but we want to create a model for part of the population which may be more effective in terms of achieving better outcomes. And we think that actually gives us that opportunity. We achieve great outcomes. On the other hand, that's where the business comes in. You are able to engage with your client all the way through. You can create a loyal, repeat customer, plus along the phase 3 and 4, you can actually upsell services, right? E-consultations, they are not for free. but you can charge e-consultations. You can support this with supplements, right? You can support this with, for example, tele-rehabilitation or whatever therapeutic interventions you can do online, remotely. Yeah, those are additional business opportunities for you as an operator. So there's a lot of opportunities there, how you can do it. And if you look at a number of medical wellness players out there, they have started to grasp the opportunity there. But you going forward, starting fresh, I think there's a whole playground, which you can actually use. Okay, I talked about health journeys, right? And again, it depends where you are, where your expertise sits. If you're more into alternative medicine, traditional medicine, then your health journeys may look differently. If you want to go down more the, let's say, conventional medicine path, like this here, then your health journeys will obviously focus more on these areas. So you design your health journeys according to your competency and what you want to achieve. We have designed 8 health journeys, from metabolic improvement and weight management to performance improvement, resilience growth, vital aging, gut health, which is the healthy tummy. So there's a lot of health journeys you can create, but our advice is at the beginning, and again, this is about clarity. Don't make it too complicated. Yeah? Make it clear to the client what you stand for and what each health journey is. If you're creating too many health journeys, you create too many options to pick from. It's getting very complicated. Some of the examples I showed you earlier, they only have 2 health journeys, and then you add on different modules, right? So there's different ways how you can play. I think you should have more than 2, you should probably have 4 to 6 or to 8, and make very clear what are the health objectives of these journeys. I have picked one health journey as an example. Next. Sorry, before, I mentioned that, and this is now on site. Yeah, so if a guest moves on site, the first step of any health journey is the diagnostic stage. So we have a very comprehensive set of medical assessments, medical examinations, and lab tests. So this is almost no difference to a hospital setup, right? And that's where we said we make it very medical, and we make it scientific, we make it evidence-based. All our judgments, our conclusions are based scientifically and evidence-based. That's how the health journey starts. We don't want to leave that. So we have listed out assessments, examinations, and lab tests. Not all will be done for every guest, right? Depending on the health journey, there will be different, let's say, a different focus. But what's very clear is, here is, you need medical personnel, you need healthcare professionals to conduct those assessments and examinations. These are done in-house. The lab tests are given to an outsourced provider. As you now know, I mean, there's a lot of specialist lab tests, right? If you want to go into genomic or genetic testing, this cannot, usually not done, not even by hospitals, right? You would outsource it to somebody. So certainly us, we would not have a lab on site. We would give it outsourced and then let them do it. Some testing requires a longer lead time, and this is sometimes then done in the pre-arrival phase. Yeah, if a test takes, for example, 7 days to come back, you need to do it at the pre-arrival phase in order to be on time when the guest checks in. So we have a very strong focus on the screenings and the assessments. And then we move into the second part of the health journeys are really the health interventions. Yeah? So the health interventions mirror very much what you have seen in terms of lifestyle medicine, right? It's really about mental health, the cognitive health part. It's about mobility, physical activity. It's about wellness. It's about nutrition. It's about sleep. It's about complementary medicine, traditional medicine, TCM, whatever you call it. We were having a discussion this morning, right? I think what makes Asia very special, almost every country has its own way of practicing traditional medicine. Bali has a very strong rooting in Balinese traditional medicine. So does Thailand, so does China, right? The Middle East, they have their own way of practicing traditional medicine. And that's a beautiful complementation to what you do as a healthcare provider, but it also differentiates you well, right? Because no one else in the world will do Balinese traditional medicine. And I think no one will do, let's say, Thai traditional medicine, right? So, or Ayurveda, you usually, yes, you do it elsewhere, but if you go to India, that's where you experience it firsthand. So I think Balinese traditional medicine is a big differentiator for you here if you integrate that into your service concept. And then nutrition, and then I think aesthetics and dental, right, is something which obviously has a big impact on health and well-being, and that's why it's there. I mean, people would usually say dental is not really related, you know, to preventive health or health and well-being. But we know as a matter of fact that not only dental hygiene has a big impact on your actually health and well-being, but aesthetic in particular, right? The way you look, the way you feel about yourself is important. So our approach to aesthetics is we don't go invasive. Yeah, so we are not doing any invasive procedures, but we do it non-invasive. So it's mostly focusing on dermatology or body sculpturing. So let's say medically non-risk procedures. But this is our approach. Yeah? You may find a different approach. And because there's a lot of, what I see in Thailand, a lot of players, you know, venture into that field. What's important as well is ethics, right? You need to, you know, whatever you do in terms of aesthetics, it has to be scientifically based, right? You don't want to leave that path. So that's key too. Okay? This is just one example of a health journey, which is the resilience growth journey, right? Resilience is about mental strength. Building mental strength, and we all know mental diseases, mental health has actually become much more a problem. It's something in particular in Asia people don't want to talk about, or are not so much used to talk about yet. It's coming, and that's good. But it's certainly a very serious disease. We heard before, right? A lot of people get anxious, stressed, depressed. So we bring in this whole, let's say, resilience journey, and one of the key protective factors, and this is a protective factor, for example, is positive psychology, right? It's the part of psychology which is not related to pathology. So it's not about people who are actually sick, but it's about building purpose, meaning in life. So this journey is about really strengthening your mental resilience. It's a 7 to 14 days journey, and obviously this journey focuses on different aspects as, let's say, the metabolic growth or metabolic improvement journey. So this is very much about stress management, emotional health, physical activity. So all the different journeys have a different focus, yeah, in what they do in terms of diagnostics and in terms of their services. And you see at the far end, at the end, continuous digital support. So In Thailand, for example, we have a lot of also addiction clinics, yeah, which actually deal with, you know, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, any kind of abuse. And even these guys have now moved on, and COVID was part of the reason. They have now moved on to provide a lot of online support, yeah, and it's working. So I think even mental health, you know, if you have this continuous support through digital solutions, it can work. Yeah, unfortunately, it's very unclear. If we briefly talk about staffing, right? Obviously, a staffing structure for a medical wellness resort looks different than a hospital, for sure, and also different to a, let's say, a usual hotel setup. So it has to be an integrated setup. You cannot separate, let's say, what you do in terms of healthcare from what you do in hospitality. So at the very top, you have a GM, a managing director, CEO. On the far left here, you have the usual hospitality services. Yeah, so you have your F&B, you have your back of house, your facility, and so forth. The second column is the lifestyle health. So whatever falls under, let's say, the medical portion is covered here. So you have the preventive medicine, you have the complementary and alternative medicine, you have beauty and aesthetics, you have physiotherapy, you have fitness. All that falls under a clinical director, yeah, chief medical officer, whatever you want to call that role. But it's a clinical role. So a clinical person is managing all those clinical journeys. Then you have the HR director, you have, can barely read it, it's the financial director, the commercial director takes care of all the business development and the marketing and the sales, and you have a quality director who deals with compliance, CSR, and so forth, and sustainability. So what's important is that the setup you create is integrated. I mean, if that's what you want to achieve. We had a conversation in the morning, you know, where you also have clinics inside of hotels. That can be a first starting point, right? So you have this resort, you set up your clinic as a starting point in here. This is not an integrated wellness concept, but it could be a starting point for you to test the market, right? In order to get to know your future clients. Who are they? Where do they come from? What are their needs and requirements? Later on, after you have experienced this for a few years, you decide, okay, now what we do is we create an integrated experience. So this entire resort becomes a medical resort, for example. Yeah. So there are different journeys for you, how you can look at your development. Or the other way around is in your hospital, and I know some of you have done this. In your hospital, you set up a wellness center, right? And this is kind of your venture into what could preventive medicine wellness look like. So you can approach it from different angles. Our objective certainly is that at one day you move outside of the hospital into this kind of resort setting, yeah, and really integrate all these services. What's important here, the spa would also be under the clinical director. We also say a few things here about if you, let's say, start this whole project from scratch, when you have to recruit. So the key people should be on board probably a year before you go operational. Yeah. While let's say the other clinical staff can probably come on board 3 to 5 months before operations. Okay.
4 minutes.
Yeah, good. I have to speed up. Then medical technology comes in both on the diagnostic, the screening side, but also on the therapeutic side. Yeah. So there's a lot of, it's packed with medical technology. So a lot of diagnostic equipment to, let's say, diagnose and screen the guests. And then on the interactive side, you know, there's gait training, there's a medical gym, an interactive gym. So the medical equipment follows your service plan, right? First, you develop your service plan, your medical, your journeys, and then you look at what equipment do you need in order to serve those journeys. So you can go extreme, and your investment will be 3 to 5 million US dollars, which is a big investment. Or you can, let's say, start with the scoped down version with $1 million US, yeah, and then gradually build your expertise as you go. I mentioned the digital support. Very critical pre-arrival and post-arrival. There will be some digital application also guiding the guests through the on-site experience in terms of appointments, in terms of real-time progress. But the digital support is really important for the pre- and post-arrival experience. We ourselves have developed an app which will guide the guest through the entire journey, yeah, from pre to post-arrival. There's a lot of commercial applications out there. We still think it's better to actually do your own application because you know your requirements best. Reason also being that the development costs have really come down tremendously. Yeah, it's fairly easy now to find developers who are able to develop this for, I would say, a few thousand US dollars. I mentioned before, right, how much progress can we really achieve in 1 or 2 weeks? And if we are honest to ourselves, it's modest. What we do in the resort is only a trigger, yeah? I call it a nudge, right? You nudge someone into something, but we can achieve certain outcomes, and we can actually, I think, achieve more than what we think we can do. I picked one example of the metabolic improvement journey. So if we look at what can be done in 2 weeks, right? In-house, we can probably, yeah, we can reduce the BMI and we can reduce the blood glucose. Those levels, they will reduce within a few days even, right? After 2 weeks, we certainly see an improvement and the guests will be excited. What's taking longer are biomarkers like A1C or insulin to come down. Right? This is a person with pre-diabetes or even diabetes, but it will take time to come down. Weeks, months, or even years. That is very, very depending on the person. So, and that's when you realize why we need to have this 4-phase model, right? Because in the 1 phase of on-site treatments, we can only achieve so much. And in order to ensure that we get the health outcomes we want to achieve and our client wants to achieve, we need to follow up and monitor our client all the way through. In order to make sure we get the A1C down, we get the insulin down. This is just a very simple example, and I'm not a doctor, to show you how that can actually work for one health journey. What's also important, what I didn't mention before, the health journeys are customized and personalized to a certain degree because we are doing those investigations, right? So we're getting the findings, and depending on those findings, we may actually customize or personalize the health journeys to a certain degree. Yes, we follow a certain protocol, but we have the ability to customize as well. Good, we are coming close to the end. So this is the summary for the 4-phase model. So the in-house experience can only trigger the impulse change, yeah? It's the nudge. But the 4-phase model then turns the nudge into a habit, yeah? A habit takes longer to build. And we want to make this a habit. So we need to have that opportunity. The habit then creates a continuity of care model which turns the client into a loyal and engaged client, which provides you long-term with a sustainable and recurring revenue model. So that's key. Moving on. Quickly on the business model. I've shown this last time round. The idea here is that, so we have the preventive screenings, we have the integrative screenings, or interventions. We see this as a combination of two partners, hospitality and healthcare, right? It's possible that one partner can do the whole job, but for example, you working mostly in healthcare, it's good to get a hospitality partner because they have this client experiential expertise and experience, which usually we as healthcare providers, we lack, right? We are not, to be honest, oftentimes not very client focused or driven. So we need to bring that expertise in, and the hospitality provider can bring us this expertise. So having this partnership, that's why we have tourism and healthcare joining forces, can actually create these mutually beneficial partnerships. The way you do it business-wise can be a profit share model, or can be different business arrangements, can be joint ventures where you team up. There's different ways how you spin it. Good? Do I have a few minutes more, or?
In 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Just quickly on branding. It's important, and this comes back to the positioning and to the clarity of your profile. How much do you want this to be seen as a hospitality resort or as a healthcare resort, right? On the left hand, it's really the partner focus. If you take this resort, for example, then it would carry this name, and your healthcare brand would just come as an endorsement. While if you look at the right-hand side, you would actually create your own medical wellness brand. And we think the sweet spot probably lies in the middle. So for example, you have hotel operator A, Marriott, whatever, and you have you as a healthcare operator. For example, Barmed, it's a Barmed healthcare resort. So, for example, Marriott, Barmed healthcare resort, right? So you can play this any way you want. What's important here is you have this combination of hospitality and medical, and what the branding agencies tell us, it's important that you have a descriptor, healthcare or vitality or wellness, so people know who you are. If you don't have that, in particular when you start off, you may not be able to get that clear profile. So branding, just my advice is, branding is very important to get a very clear position, a very clear profile. So spend sufficient time and unfortunately also money on the branding side. Okay, quickly just run through the last few slides. Sales channels, it's always important to know how do your clients book your health journeys. In medical wellness, it's different to tourism, it's different to healthcare, right? You have blue is direct, so they approach you directly. Red is through online, by email, etc. The interesting part, and this is similar to healthcare, are the agencies. In healthcare and in medical wellness, you have medical agents, right? They work globally and they are specialized on healthcare and medical wellness offerings. Different to tourism, different agents. So you need to identify, you need to make contact with those medical wellness agents because they bring you those guests. That's a very critical piece. You see, they go from, depending on the market, from 20 up to 40% of your guests will come through medical agencies. And then we obviously have the wholesalers like Agoda, Booking.com, which is a very small portion here in terms of medical wellness. Okay? We have just listed out a few. Those guys specialize on medical wellness. You can look them up, you can call them up. They want to see a very clear profile of what you do, so they can explain to their clients who you are, what you do, what the clients get out of it. If that's not clear to them, they are not going to promote you. In terms of this slide, is just important that if you are an integrated resort, right, you want to make sure that most of your clients actually come for medical wellness and not just as hotel guests. Hotel operators, they have the tendency to just fill the rooms. So they have high occupancy. You as a healthcare medical wellness operator, you want them to actually be on health journeys. The problem you have, if they just come here for the rooms and not for the journeys, your whole medical wellness resort will not be perceived as a medical wellness resort. People will look at it as a hotel. So from day one onwards, you have to drive the message, this is a medical wellness resort. You come here to do health journeys. You don't just come here for staying in our rooms. Yes, there is some flexibility, but just be very clear in your message. Yeah, and the difference here is red and blue is how many of your people are doing health journeys and how many are just staying in the rooms. Okay, I think we are close to done. Knowing your clients well, different key markets have different lengths of stay. For example, the Australians stay on average 8 days, while other guys stay a little shorter. But the message here is health journeys are on average 7.4 days, while tourists usually stay 2.4 days. So there's a huge upside for going into medical wellness. Okay. That's the final slide. I just want to give you, I want to summarize, just bring them up 5 reasons why medical wellness is interesting and is the right thing to do and it's attractive. Yeah. First of all, we all want to achieve better guest outcomes, better health outcomes, right? And I hope I was able to drive that message to you that preventive health medicine is able to do that. So that's the left one. You are able to build lifelong relationships with your clients. And I think that both ensures better health outcomes, but also drives your business long term. It enhances the guest and patient experience. I think in hospitals, we always lack the guest experience, right? We're not doing so well. Bringing in a hospitality operator, having that expertise actually helps us to provide better value to our guests. We are increasing our revenue streams and our profitability, as I've shown before, and we are expanding our business and market. And just picture this as a healthcare operator. You're dealing with 10% of the total population who are sick, let's say, right? This model is dealing with the 90% who are not sick, who may have some risk issues, but who are actually healthy. So you're tapping into a much bigger market. And as a healthcare operator, if they fall sick, if they have any health condition, you can still refer them to your hospital. So you create this continuity of care. And I think that is what really is interesting for you as a healthcare provider as well. Good. That brings me to an end. So we will have more discussions this afternoon and tomorrow. But if you're interested to partner or if you have questions, if you need some direction, happy to have a discussion, let me know. I have my vision, in future is that as the future doctor in future will prescribe lifestyle over pills, over medicine. That's kind of how I would like to see medicine evolve. I know It's not going to be the case for all diseases, right? But I think a lot of diseases we can actually treat that way. So that's how I would like to see it. And if I haven't enticed someone of you to at least go into preventive medicine in future, then I'm already happy and I've done my job for today. So thank you very much, and happy to have questions now or even later. I'll be around all day.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Weigl. Actually, my background is preventive medicine, so I'm really happy that you asked, not all, maybe most of the doctors to prescribe preventive medicine treatment rather than merely the curative treatment. Okay, now we open the discussion Q&A for the second session. Please, Dr. Chok.
Okay, I'm Chok from Primavera Hospital. I just ask one question. Can you explain more about pre-arrival test? Are the guests take the test at their country? And how can you manage about that and connect it, the test with your facility? Can you explain more about that? Because
I didn't hear the first part. Which test?
Pre-arrival.
Pre-arrival. Yeah. Can you explain more about that?
I mean, the idea here is that we would send test kits, right, to the client, and the test kit would then go to the laboratory, and we would receive the results. So we would have to make sure that logistically we manage it in such a way that test results are available when the client checks in the system.
Let me elaborate the question, because the client is abroad.
Yeah, abroad.
So
Yeah.
do you expect the client to do the test there and send the result to
Yes.
us prior to come up?
Yes, correct. So we would actually manage the logistical process. So we would, because we're not doing the test ourselves, right? So we would actually ask the lab provider to send the test kit there to the client. The client does it at home. Or if, let's say, a clinical setting is required, there would be a clinical partner. Test results would then be through digital technology passed on to us. So we have the results here when the client checks it. That's the idea.
Okay, thank you. I get it.
Okay, yeah. I think I have also the same question, because I wonder where can we do it in the pre-arrival, because the patient is still abroad. But considering that the client would be here for 1 week or 2, I think nearly all the tests can be done, and we have already got the result within a week time. Okay, another question. I do not see any question from the chat. Yes, doctor, please. Somebody give the mic.
Thank you. I'm interested about the last sentence that you mentioned about kerjasama, cooperation, collaboration. If I met come to I mean,
so you are interested. Basically, actually, this hospital is wonderful. I went there; it's good. So he's the hospital director. He said that
when you stay in Bali, you can visit. We can make a collaboration to start visit Bali. Like pendampingan there.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, he's also studying Ayurveda in India, master degree. Say that again. Yoga, and so studying master degree in yoga in India. Yeah, sure. I think Mr. Weigl will be more than interested to have them collaborate with your hospital, because in Ubud is a tourism destination. Is very good.
We can that for to start the collaboration.
I mean, for us, obviously,
Would you please use the mic?
Sure. I mean, for us, obviously, it's very interesting to take this concept to Bali as well. We are currently developing this concept in the Middle East, for example, and in Thailand. And for me, Bali is the natural progression, right? Because there are so many ingredients which are already in place. And now healthcare becomes more open in Indonesia, right? In terms of also bringing in, let's say, overseas expertise, which I think is important anywhere in the world, right? Because Ayurveda, you know, you want to have your experts probably from India, right? In terms of other disciplines, you may someone from US, from Europe. So I think it's good in terms of progressing to have that freedom to bring in professionals from all over. And I think that's important for Bali to have that ability. So I see that as a very important ingredient as well.
We have a collaboration with medical faculty, Wiryana medical faculty. We have patient, they have researcher, the collaboration. We will try to make more research about our traditional values. Yeah. We have Usada Weigl. There's a therapy. There's therapy, how to healing using dancing. And few professor and few doctor, guru Japan and make a research, we can enhance telomere, also make our brain neuroplasticity and good research, and we will implement to patient like that. So we have many group of medicine in Bali, such as pediatrician, geriatric, skin, many others. We will make like Ayurveda using terminology Bali. The last question, please share about health journey, Mr. Chris, metabolic improvement, health mind, cortisol. You before you share about resilient growth, please the other terminology. Maybe you can share with us what kind of this describe. You can describe. Tadi kan ada banyak terminologi nih. Tadi dijelaskan resilient growth itu sudah diceritakan.
Oh, resilience growth. Okay, so you would like to know, he would like you to elaborate more about resilience growth.
No, not only about resilient growth, but the other like methodology, performance, what kind of this product?
Okay.
Every individual journey.
No. Yeah, I mean, you can describe to us like you describe resilient.
Oh, okay.
So
I think what I'll do is I will send it because it's too long. Yeah. I will
Okay.
send this information. Yeah. Separately. Yeah. Like for resilience, we would like to have the information of the other experts. Right? Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. Otherwise, we have to repeat the lecture. So I think it's okay, doctor. You're the hospital director of Arisanti. I think tomorrow we will have a business match also. You can replace me because there is my name there. You can replace me tomorrow if you want to. You can bring your company profile and then discuss tomorrow morning. Mr. Weigl will be here. Other question perhaps from other parties? Please, sir, please. Panitia, tolong provide the mic.
Saya menyampaikan di dalam bahasa Indonesia. Izin.
Ya, silakan.
No problem. Saya Indi dari SUP Pulau Merah. Kami saat ini sedang membangun, mengembangkan untuk medical wellness. Terutama kami banyak hal yang akan kami padukan. Terutama tadi kami masih ada yang tertarik antara 3 destinasi, hotel sama hospital. Kita belum sampai ke sana untuk berpikir untuk menggabungkan hal 3 hal itu. Bisa dijelaskan kira-kira apa yang harus kami lakukan? Apakah harus kami mencari hotel? Ini harus kerjasama karena kami juga sudah punya brand kami belum sampai ke 3 hal itu. Kami sudah kerjasama dengan salah satu brand di Korea. Jadi kami belum berpikir sampai yang ketiga itu. Apa kami harus melakukan yang 3 itu? Yang kedua, tentunya karena ini belum ada disinggung sedikit pun tentang pemasarannya. Kami rasa nih pemasaran menjadi ujung tombak karena unit bisnis itu, karena kami namanya unit bisnis ya, di tempat kami akan membangun unit bisnis yang tentunya akan memerlukan pemasaran yang sangat karena kita diberikan target kerja sehingga kami hampir menghasilkan kalau udah hampir 600 miliar di target untuk 1 tahun. Sehingga apa yang harus kami lakukan untuk menjaring pasar yang ada di luar, karena brand kami berbeda yang disampaikan oleh Mr.
Jadi kami belum tergambar tentang pemasarannya. Yang ketiga, kami di dalam membangun brand ini, kami baru mencoba membangun dengan cara karena ada hal lain. Jadi kami terkait dengan regulasi, terutama regulasi yang ada di Indonesia sangat sulit sekali untuk mengembangkan dalam arti kebebasan. Artinya kalau kita sama dengan arti tentunya kan ada hal-hal lain yang tentunya harus kita perhatikan, apalagi dengan destinasi juga akan berbagi, artinya berbagi dalam tanda kutip. Ini menjadi kesulitan. Kira-kira apa yang harus kami lakukan sehingga dengan membangun brand ini kami bisa dipermudah dalam melakukan artinya menjaring pasar yang ada di luar. Terima kasih.
Okay, do you understand? I'm just joking. I will translate for you. So he's from Patra Hospital, used to be called Sangla Hospital, is our top referral hospital. It's very interesting. My wife is also working there. Istri saya di sana Pak. Kalau ada perawat di Micu, cantik kayak dulu topping itu istri saya. So basically they develop a wellness tourism there. They dedicate one building, very beautiful building. I have seen the building; it's really amazing. So they would like to ask how to start. I think tomorrow you will come here with a business plan and you can discuss in person with him directly because it's very interesting. And number two is he's curious about the marketing strategy because by far it seems like we haven't described about the marketing strategy because as a business unit, he has the responsibility to, he has a target basically, it's a budget. He has to meet 600 billion rupiah, that's in rupiah, but still a lot of money in a year. So he want to have to develop a marketing strategy. In detail, we can discuss about it tomorrow. But actually, this is also very interesting because before we also discuss about how to develop marketing. You can use the theory of marketing, for example, marketing mix, using a 7 P's of marketing. Literally, you can do the P, and then you also think about attending an international conference for the marketing. Because I used to be a hospital director in the M.Sc hospital, and that's how we do it. We come to the conference where there is a travel agent, not travel agent, medical agent, maybe a doctor, and then you can promote this one. But you need somebody who can do this one. And I think before you answer, I gave you a clue that please jangan alergi ya, do not hesitate to hire people with the expert in doing so, even though if he is not Balinese. Kita harus terbuka ya. Kebanyakan orang berpikir jangan saya bilang, you know what, Lionel Messi is not Spanish, tapi dia main di Barcelona. Dan Barcelona itu jadi maju pesat ketika kita terbuka. Jadi my message is don't be close-minded, be open-minded. If you have to recruit somebody with the expertise like him, for example, who can help you to do the marketing stuff, do it. It's okay, you can learn about it later on. Rather than kita paksa, pokoknya saya orang Bali juga kayak, kita paksa, saya jadi nggak bisa. You have to be open-minded. Number one, you have to be able to describe like this in English properly, and you have to be able to answer all the questions. And if you don't know, you say so. Be honest. There's different kind of people that we deal with. Because I'm dealing with English-speaking patients for nearly 20 years, I realize they have a different kind of culture compared to Indonesian. So think about it. That's number one. And number two, until number 10, maybe Mr. Weigl can explain about it. Is number one, about how to start to initiate the wellness product, especially if we have to cover all the three kind of units that we have already mentioned before. And number two, about the marketing, how we do the marketing properly so that we can achieve the so-called target.
I'll start with number 2 first. I think and you're spot on. I think you should not shy away to really engage someone who has done this before. And the experience we have, and you know, we also bring in experts. Yeah. So it's not that we know everything ourselves and we can do everything ourselves. So what I showed you a few slides in terms of branding, for example, that has not been developed by us, but by a consultant. And marketing follows branding, right? And I think that's why I would like to start with it first. I've talked a lot today about get your positioning right, right? And this is the first part of your branding exercise. To whichever branding agency you will talk, they will ask you, what's your positioning, right? What's your profile? What are you doing? What's your expectations? Who do you want to be? What's your target clientele? Those are all very strategic questions. So before you even think about marketing, you need to get your positioning and your branding right. The branding exercise really helps you to answer all these questions. And once you have done this, then it trickles down to what you call the 7 or the 4 Ps, right? Then you can do really the marketing plan. Then you will look at the pricing, you will look at all those tactical measures. But for me, this is really a far second step. So I will always start with this really strategic positioning branding exercise, because it's so important, otherwise your clients will really get confused. So this would be my approach in terms of marketing, and that actually ties into the first question, right, is how to set it up. So the way we do it is always very structured, right? I hear you already have your facility. So we would always, let's say it's a greenfield project, we would always look at the market first, right? So that's why I put up the first slide. How many tourists come into Bali? Where do they come from? Then you would look deeper, right? What wellness, what healthcare needs do they have? So it's a very detailed study. From there, you then develop which services are we going to provide. So your service profile, right? How medical do you go, for example? And then only then you develop your facility. But I understand oftentimes you have a facility and you want to build that facility, you do it the other way around. But usually, spatial requirements follow service requirements, right? You look first at the service requirements and then go into what space do I need to actually deliver those services? And lastly is the business plan, right? The financial aspect of it, which then also triggers the whole branding, the whole marketing. That's how I would start it from a planning perspective. If you already have your facility up and running, which I understand is your case, then you still need to, I would say, still work very hard on the client piece, the service piece, yeah, and the marketing. You cannot skip those steps. In fact, you still need to answer them in order to have a clear concept and a clear positioning. But happy to talk with you in more detail tomorrow. Yeah. So I understand where you are at the moment, but one point is very clear. Bring in good people, yeah? If you do it for the first time, you know, yes, you can make mistakes, but try to do it as good and well as possible. And external people help you. That's what we do as well, you know? Where we feel we have not the expertise, we bring the experts. Yeah, it just helps. It saves you a lot of time and money, eventually.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me tell you that all of the participants here understand when you deliver the message in English. Most of them are a bit shy to ask a question in English, but actually I believe you understand what they explain, because all of us here has been studying English at least 6 years, 3 years in junior high school and 3 years in senior high school. So all of us here have been studying English for at least 6 years. Not to mention that you speak a bit more slowly compared to American one, so which is good. So tomorrow sudah dijadwalkan, saya lihat Prof. Murah sudah ada Pak, bisa dibayarkan bisnis prosesnya, nanti ketemu in person bisa langsung ngobrol. Ya sudah ada namanya, nanti nama saya juga ada, nanti udah bisa ganti saya karena bisa saya nanti karena panitia saya kan. Maybe there will be another question, one more question before we continue with Prof. Laksono. Ada pertanyaan yang ada dapat voucher ke Pamet enggak ya? Oh, dari luar saya periksa di sini tidak ada Prof. Tidak ada Prof. Saya periksa. Terima kasih untuk Dr. Chok, saya dipinjamin MacBook-nya, bagus sekali. Selama 1 bulan ya. Baik, kalau tidak ada, since there is no more question, perhaps we can continue with the next speaker, Prof. Laksono. Thank you so much, Mr. Weigl. Next speaker, I invite Prof. Laksono to deliver. Don't worry, this time Prof. Laksono will deliver the discussion in Japanese. Can we invite Prof. Laksono? Ini mirip. Bagus topiknya. Silakan Prof. Dapat waktu belum? Oh ya, silakan Prof.
Ya, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum. Ya. Oke, jadi saya sedikit memberi presentasi tadi sebagai pengantar untuk nanti teman-teman yang masuk workshop. Ada 10 kelompok, ada 10 di sini. Tapi juga ada yang dari Panggilan atau Oke, nah mohon slide-nya ya. Jadi saya berusaha untuk melihat apa yang tadi disampaikan oleh Pak Chris, Chris. Thank you very much for your presentation. Jadi ada 2 bisnis entitled unit ya yang kita lihat ya. Satu itu resort hotel, yang kedua adalah wedding. Nah, kombinasi keduanya ini yang nanti kita akan lihat ya. Sehingga memang kembali ke nanti ke bisnis plan. Itu siapa yang membuat bisnis plan ini? Apakah rumah sakit bikin sendiri, atau resortnya yang bikin, atau dua-duanya bersama-sama? Nah, yang ideal tadi dua-duanya ya. Oke. Nah, sehingga saya mencoba untuk lihat ke sini ya, slide. Ada beberapa hal ya. Yang poin 1, 2 itu sudah kita ingin untuk remind ya waktu kita di kantor gubernur ya tentang konsep dan pengelolaannya. Yang ketiga mengenai pasar, awareness dan bisnis plan ya. Dan yang keempat mengenai visi kita ya. Mengapa kita berkumpul ini? Karena kita sudah lama sekali bicara terus, tapi belum realisasi ya. Kita berharap ada realisasinya ya. Oke, slide berikutnya ya. Nah, konsepnya kalau kita lihat slide ya. Sekali lagi ini sebagai refleksi aja ya. Kita dulu ya. Jadi ini memang mereka adalah yang pakai ya, pengguna itu traveling. Jadi traveling, jadi bukan orang di pasar pakai kesana itu tidak masuk. Ya. Tapi orang Jogja ke Denpasar untuk mencari pengobatan atau healing itu termasuk. Atau dari Singapura ke misalnya ke Surabaya itu termasuk. Oke, right. Nah, ini yang jadi kunci ya. 10% yang sakit dan 10% sehat. Nah, ini mengatakan aja penggunanya berikut yang hitam putih ya, yang slide. Karena ini yang disebut sebagai wisata medis dengan PMK nomor 76 tahun 2015. Yang ada kelas A dan kelas B masih kan ya. Ya ini kuratif. Nah, yang 90% yang sehat itu memang ada tugas bersama ini itu baru ya antara Menkes dan sekarang Pak Budi Berisatikin dengan Pak Sandiaga Uno itu ada SKP yang slide berikutnya ya, yang intinya ada 4 topik ya, 4 jalur ya untuk desa medik, wisata kebugaran yang herbal, wisata yang kesehatan dan wisata olahraga yang kesehatan. Wisata medik tadi ya, yang tahun 2015, nah ini yang kita sebutlah bagian dari poin P, wisata kebugaran. Jadi wellness itu ada macam-macam apa ya cabang atau subnya ya. Ada yang wellness etnis, ada itu ini. Nah ini wellness medik ya, atau medical wellness. Nah ini yang tadi ya, Pak Chris itu memaparkan mengenai medical wellness yang juga ada ilmiahnya ya, jadi tetap ada impact yang bisa diukur ya. Slide ya. Nah definisinya seperti ini ya. Jadi mempunyai berbagai pengaruh kesehatan dan ini menggunakan cara untuk menangani dan mencegah penyakit serta memproduksi hidup sehat. Nah, ini ya perlu kita lihat ya, sampai promosi hidup sehat. Nah, artinya ya. Karena bisnis wellness itu bisa diiklankan, paham ya? Jadi cara ragu nanti punya usaha atau bisnis medical wellness itu iklan itu boleh, itu mencegah penyakit itu kan harus dipromosikan. Oh ya, jadi ini ya, ada tadi nanti ada apa belikan apa Kalau yang operasi bedah itu susah ya, nggak boleh. Mari kita operasi banyak-banyak. Ya, misalnya ada mempromosikan mari kita pergi ke Bali untuk check up dan 3 hari di sana, 2 hari untuk healing, boleh nggak? Ini beda ya. Medical awareness tadi ini promosi kesehatan. Ya, nggak boleh dicegah, malah ditingkatkan. Ya, ya. Nah, SDM-nya nah ini dokter, terapis, profesional dari kesehatan dapat 3%. Dan apa yang sertifikat kompetensi resmi, nah ini yang masih belum siap lagi, tapi kita harus mulai. Di Bangkok itu Michael University yang di Thailand itu mereka banyak sekali mengembangkan untuk 2%. Jadi sertifikatnya resmi. Pendorongnya ini posisi yang menua, ekspansi yang cepat dari bisnis budaya dan peningkatan minat pada penggunaan tradisional. Jadi melihat bahwa ini tidak dapat sendirian, bisa dikombinasi dengan tradisional medicine. Ini tidak masalah ya. Ini contoh di Swiss seperti itu ya. Di Swiss itu hotel ada yang punya medical center juga, ada center dan juga punya sistem diagnostik ya. Tadi di top bersama Chris. Jadi sebenarnya MCU itu tidak hanya di rumah sakit, harusnya di luar rumah sakit MCU itu. Bahkan teman saya sekarang dengan teman dia dari Korea ya, itu investasi membuat medical check up itu bukan di rumah sakit, tapi di gedung perkantoran. Ada nggak? Ya, di Korea itu begitu modelnya. MCU-nya bukan di rumah sakit. Kalau MCU-nya ada di resort di Ubud boleh nggak? Ya. Nah ini yang menarik ya. Jadi kita membongkar paradigma lama bahwa MCU misalnya kecantikan dan itu harus di rumah sakit. Saya bilang tempat-tempat kulit ya di rumah sakit. Bagaimana mungkin Anda bisa bikin klinik kulit di rumah sakit kalau pasiennya yang banyak banget dan yang datang itu harus berdesak-desakan menunggu bersama-sama pasien yang sakit. Tidak bisa punya peluang. Harus cari cabang rumah sakit ini di satu tempat yang bagus. Misalnya rumah sakit yang kalau yang di sana saya tidak masih kurang ya. Itu punya wing sendiri Pak ya, yang khusus estetika itu bagus. Tapi kalau campur aduk dengan pasien yang lainnya, aduh susah banget ya. Set ya. Nah, pengelola di Penyusunan dari slide berikutnya yang ini tadi yang Pak Chris katakan. Ini ada entity rumah sakit dan resort. Nah, kita bisa masuk dari 2 jalur ini, masuk melalui jalurnya rumah sakit atau resort dengan medik itu berada di rumah sakit. Jadi bisa MCU atau kecantikan atau yang punya anak atau tadi ya, itu masuk ke rumah sakit kemudian pergi ke resort untuk macam-macam proses selanjutnya kan. Atau kita masuk melalui resort ya, kemudian pesan bahwa kita mau check up di rumah sakit pada hari kedua misalnya ya, atau hari pertama, nah ini bisa diatur. Ya, nah ini produknya ya, jadi ini produk yang betul-betul ada ilmu mediknya ya. Tadi yang disebut Pak itu kita betul-betul medik ya, bukan sesuatu yang di luar medik ya. Tapi bisa dikombinasi ya, dengan tradisional ya. Ini nggak masalah ya. Saya pernah lalu saya diundang oleh teman-teman dari Aslam ya, dari di Bogor ya. Mereka mengkombinasikan pengukuran diagnostiknya dengan indikator gula darah, ya, tensi macam-macam ya. Pokoknya medical indicators ya, dengan penanganan model India atau India itu menurut dari asal itu bukan India ya, tapi India itu masuk Indonesia karena dulu teorinya itu India dan bisa menjadi satu kesatuan tanah ya, dulunya itu kan ya. Jadi karena ada air meleleh di kutub mana es yang meleleh ya, es yang meleleh jadilah bisa ya. Jadi ilmu India dan ilmu Jawa itu saya sama. Nah, di orang India juga ada orang Jawa. Nah, orang Jawa juga ada India. Jadi kita satu kesatuan budaya. Nah ini, jadi visitor tadi itu proses bisnisnya masuk melalui resort atau masuk melalui rumah sakit. Ini satu pendekatan. Yang besok ada semua akan diskusi dengan Pak Chris. Ya. Kita lihat di listnya itu ada yang pengusaha resort, owner resort, tapi juga ada yang di rumah sakit. Nah, ini tolong starting point Anda dari mana ya? Itu penting sekali. Nah, sehingga kalau kita lihat pasarnya ya, mari kita lihat Terus, nah ini jenis kelompok pengguna, fokus saya di sini. Ya, ini macam-macam ya, terus. Ya, terus. Nah ini yang jadi isu kunci ya. Jadi memang pangsa pasar berbasis produk ya, itu yang paling banyak memang personal care, beauty, and anti-aging. Ini yang di bawah ya, yang coklat tua ya. Kemudian nutrition and weight loss. Ya. Kemudian fitness and mind body. Kemudian preventative and personalized medicine. Kemudian traditional and complementary medicine. Medical spa. Kemudian thermal atau mineral space. Dan workplace awareness. Jadi ini kira-kira ya pasarnya ya yang perlu kita lihat ya. Jadi Anda mau menyediakan apa itu ada di sini. Sebagai bayangan ya. Ya, slide. Nah tadi yang Pak katakan ya, berarti you have only one ya, berarti at least only one. Berarti workplace dan oh, itu Pak. Homo sambara. Itu nama apa Pak? Enggak, homo bahasa apa? Sanskerta. Ya, homo sambara. Dan itu bukan medical wellness ya, operator medical wellness ya, yang di sebelah sana ya. Yaitu kalau kita lihat coba, Anda perhatikan ya, ini menarik ya. Peta ini itu menunjukkan lebih berat ke sana ya, dibanding yang di sini ya. Ya, betul kan? Dan juga yang di upper class itu juga banyak di sana. Kami ini agak sesak di sini. Artinya apa? Memang medical wellness itu jadi satu tren ya, yang inilah yang kita cari di sini. Cuma tadi kita belum punya operator di sini. Dan Pak Chris, you touch it in this position. Kalau kita lihat ya, ini kayak bintang 4, bintang 5 kan. Bukan yang bintang yang ada bintang apa tuh ya? Kalau itu kurangnya apa ya? Di atas bintang itu, bintang itu sudah. It's very expensive ya. Laksa is very expensive kan, top of the line ya. Dan harganya itu rasa yang Elizabeth tadi di workshop kita bahas ya. Itu laksa itu untuk 3 hari bisa sampai 150 juta ya. Betul ya, Elizabeth 150-an ya, 4-5 hari. Ya, di Prima Medika itu 4 hari, 3 hari dapat 25 juta. Ya, kira-kira 25 juta. Jadi mungkin Prima Medika ya atau bintang 3 lah. Oke ya, slide. Nah, itu memang kita butuh rencana bisnis itu ya, untuk pasar global atau pasar domestik ini ya, atau dua-duanya. Ini yang perlu kita lihat. Jadi pada waktu saya dan Pak Chris diskusi, I think we started discussion, I think and I did it to Europe last year, and then you said that you target Sarfai bintang 5. Oke. And I asked tanya Pak Chris ya, bagaimana dengan yang lebih rendah ya? Iya ada, ya sudah yang ini saya kunjungi di Austria, itu untuk ukuran orang Austria itu kelas mungkin menengah ya, awal kita mahal Pak. Yang pamer itu kalau harga misalnya itu saya pakai fisioterapi ya, dan juga terapi isi saya pakai itu 1 jam sekitar 1,5 juta. Ya, untuk fisioterapi itu sama dengan Iwan, jadi ini tidak terlalu tinggi untuk ukuran Eropa. Kalau yang 1 jam 10 juta itu barangkali yang paling mahal. Ya, jadi ini pasarnya siapa? Keputusannya. Nah, ini penting sekali untuk kita di keputusan. Slide. Nah, rencana bisnis ini tentunya akan lihat ada siapa, pasar yang mana, di mana, kapan, dan bagaimana. Ya, nanti teman-teman akan ya, ikut ini ya, akan betul kami dorong untuk bikin latihan itu secara tegas ya. Jangan ragu-ragu kalau pasar saya memang bintang 2 atau bintang 3. Nggak masalah, karena ini mungkin domestik banyak. Kalau kita lihat berapa jumlah turis datang ke Bali domestik atau Pak Iwan, apa? 7.000 coba deh. Prima Medika untuk kapasitas medical check-up-nya ada sehari. Paling berapa? 20. Bayangin. Kalau ada satu bis masuk dari dari Banyuwangi ke sini untuk check up juga, kemudian udah nggak bisa. Nah, ini menarik ya, domestic market itu juga tinggi loh, dengan kita abaikan itu. Nah, tujuannya, nah ini seperti ini, peta tadi, ya, terus outline-nya, nah ini yang nanti baru saja teman-teman, Patra juga menjadi pelatih, Bu Dian juga. Nah ini akan masuk pada ini berbagai hal, profit, isi produk, isi pasar, persaingan, sampai rencana penjualan dan pemasaran, rencana manajemen, rencana operasi sampai keuangan. Nah ini poin ke-6 ini yang sangat penting juga, bagaimana memasarkan tadi. Dan sekali lagi ini open ya, terbuka untuk dipromosikan, jangan ragu-ragu untuk promosi. Karena beberapa tanya betul Pak, boleh ngasih etika gimana, tidak ada etika. Kalau sudah promosi hidup itu malah harus Pak. Ya, oke ya. Terus ya, nah ini produk apa juga yang sangat penting ya, ini catatannya ya. Produk apa yang Anda akan tawarkan ini ya? Berapa harganya tadi, marketnya berapa ya, slide. Sehingga kalau kita lihat ke depannya, nah ini visinya ya, ini kita bisa bayangkan ya, di Indonesia ini yang saya berikutnya ya, saya pribadi itu betul ya, ya petani ya, itu ada di mana-mana. Jadi medical wellness itu setiap ada resort itu ya ada resort atau hotel ya, setiap ada daerah wisata seperti Danau Toba ya, atau Buku atau Sanur di sini atau di Manado ya, itu ada resort yang menyediakan medical wellness. Misalnya di Sanur ada beberapa resort yang ada. Aku sudah kayak ada ya, banyak ya, dari kecil sampai besar ya. Coba Anda lihat, ada nggak yang mau bikin resort dengan kekasan medical wellness? Nah, ini yang menarik ya, tanpa ada yang mau, ini nggak jalan juga. Ya. Tapi kalau dia mau, bisa nggak pasarnya tidak hanya untuk yang minat, tapi mungkin tamu hotel tetangganya ya, atau resort tetangganya. Pusatnya tadi, karena dari 100 resort di sana hanya 1 atau 2 yang betul-betul dipercaya untuk menjadi wellness. Jadi kalau di Bali bisa nggak tahu ada berapa ribu resort ya? Di Ubud berapa ratus, di Kintama ini, di berapa lagi ya, di Sembinya. Nah, ini menarik tuh dari makanya mohon mungkin dari yang di Ubud Pak ya di Ansati ya, itu ada nggak resort yang sudah brandnya tadi, Pak sudah the brand is very important ya, brand is very important, brand apa? Oh, anak ya, itu berarti apa ya? Dia bersama dengan bangku ya, anak itu di bangku banyak. Berarti dia bersama dengan itu ya. Nah, udah mulai ya, satu ya, komponen ya. Ya, dibuat ya. Nah ini kita ya, yang medical betul ya, yang medical. Nah, coba deh. Kalau ini bisa dikembangkan, jadi ada Pak Redi dari Kadin ya, dari Kadinnya berapa Kadin Pak? Kalau di Kadin ada kompartemen industri wisata dan industri kesehatan ya, 2 kompartemen yang terpisah. Nah, pisah, nah ini tadi Pak Kris sudah mengusulkan supaya 2 tadi industri itu gabung bersama. Ya. Nah, siapa penggunanya? Nah ini pasar global dan pasar domestik. Ya, ini yang global bisa menyiapkan, yang domestik bisa ratusan juta. Sekali lagi, dan itu kita lihat mereka yang melakukan check up setiap tahun. Ada nggak kelompok orang yang seperti ini? Yang ada di BMN, ada di perusahaan-perusahaan besar, ada di BMS, eselon berapa, itu harus check up. Nah, yang nggak bosan bisa nggak? Mereka diberi opsi. Tahun ini check up di Dukur, dengan destinasi Dukur. Ya. Tahun depan check up di mungkin Darmawan. Ya. Jadi ini menarik, karena repeated. Ya. Jadi aktivitasnya itu berulang-ulang. Kalau operasi jantung gimana kira-kira? Ada nggak orang yang saya di operasi jantung, bisa 3 kali atau sekali? Nggak ada. Jadi itu yang ini repeated. Dari orang usia 40 dan dia eksekutif, mungkin dia akan mengalami 20 kali MCU atau 30 kali. Ya. Kemudian butuh perawatan untuk kulit dan badan, rambut tadi macam-macam ya. Healing, main, setiap kebugaran, pecinta olahraga, sepeda, tenis, goes club itu bisa nggak rombongan ke Bali untuk check up sekaligus bersepeda, boleh nggak? Bisa nggak? Bisa. Udah mulai banyak lah. Kalau sampai di bagian sepeda di Ubud ada yang meninggal, itu sering terjadi pada berita bahwa kalau tangan jatuh, tangan goes, kenapa nggak dikasih? Di Jogja sedikit. Nah, pecinta traveling, ya. Nah, ini sama ini. Mereka yang berada di daftar tunggu haji, ya, oh ya, kan haji itu bisa daftar sekarang, intinya 10 tahun lagi. Usia mendaftar 50 tahun, dapat 60 tahun. Selama 10 tahun itu kalau tidak menjaga kesehatan, bisa nggak? Pada saat mau berangkat, kena penyakitnya stroke, ya. Nah, itu harus jaga betul. Kesehatan. Itu ratusan ribu. Jadi repeated activities, slide. Dan mereka mungkin juga akan bikin kelompok-kelompok, ya. Kelompok-kelompok ya. Terus juga ada segmen-segmen tadi yang saya lihat bintang 2, 3, 4, 5 yang di atasnya ya. Ada segmen di sini. Terus, nah sehingga disinilah untuk Indonesia ini segmen tentunya siapa ini tadi ini saya mencoba menerjemahkan dari Pak Chris tadi ya, yang di medical awareness di sini ya. Ini apakah yang operator yang bintang 5, 6 itu ya mungkin dari global ya, atau Pamet atau mungkin dari Kanada dari mana ya, Raksa bikin cabang di sini juga ya, atau yang Sano sekarang IHC itu juga mungkin bisa di sini ya. Nah, apakah yang di sini yang domestik itu yang bintang 2, 3 nah ini kita belum punya petanya ya, karena belum ada operatornya. Jadi begitu ini nanti sudah muncul ada 10 peserta workshop yang jadi betul, sekali lagi dalam pengembangan bisnis itu ada workshop ya seperti ini, tapi juga nanti tergantung Anda bisa ada atau nanti ada konsultasi juga bisa. Jadi tolong semua orang yang ikut workshop itu harus investasi ya, anggap aja investasi ya. Nah, dan tadi nanti akan di mana posisinya. Baik. Terakhir ya, ini sebagai penutup, saya yakin masih akan banyak pertanyaan ya. Nah, ini. Saya coba list beberapa pertanyaan yang sering ditanyakan ya. Takut ya, dari model yang masuknya itu saya ya, melalui resort dulu ya. Jadi pertanyaan memilih resort satu ya terus. Apakah harus membuat resort baru yang brand new atau yang lama dimodifikasi? Nah, tergantung. Saya lihat banyak resort itu bagus-bagus, luas ya. Kalau ditambah unit penjualan itu nggak masalah, bisa. Ya. Termasuk ada beberapa rumah sakit jiwa milik pemerintah ya. Dan tanah itu sampai puluhan hektar ya. Itu dari tempat-tempat yang indah di Lawan, di Bogor itu menarik sekali. Ya. Terus apakah punya plan medik sendiri? Ya. Tadi atau kerjasama? Nah ini Pak Chandra ya, Pak Chandra ini sentral ya. Unikat akan membuat atau spesialis di bidangnya. Terus kali Pak, karena di Bangkok itu juga begitu, yang ada satu unit atau layanan klinis yang memang spesialis dalam traveling medicine ya, yang awareness itu dikontrak oleh hotel-hotel ini untuk membuat layanan. Atau ada tadi merek klinik ya itu bikin semacam open cabang di Ubud, misalnya di satu resort itu misalnya ya. Baik. Nah ini pendidikan kan ya boleh ya. Terus nah ini jam kerjanya, hari kerjanya ya. Kalau turis itu biasanya apalagi yang domestik itu weekend ya, penuh ya. Nah untuk yang bintang 2, 3 kalau Anda lihat ya, di mana-mana itu saya sering dari selatan waktu itu pergi ke tempat-tempat wisata itu sepi. Jadi ruangannya itu atau kamarnya terpakai hanya mungkin 10%, 20%. Nah dengan cara adanya medical awareness tadi itu bisa meningkatkan ya. Jadi tidak hanya di weekend ya. Tergantung operator mediknya tadi. Ya, kemudian bukan tamu tadi bisa. Yang bukan tamu modal dia bisa juga masuk begitu. Ya, oke terus Dan ini pertanyaan hasil dari mas rumah sakit ya, rumah sakit ya. Slide. Nah ini harus asal atau mas B? Enggak. Jadi semua rumah sakit ya punya medical check-up, punya klinik itu bisa. Jadi ini sekali lagi bukan medical tourism yang diatur dengan Permenkes 7 ya tahun ya 2015 tidak. Nah, apakah juga ada turisme saja? Tidak. Dia masuk medical check-up-nya di prima ya di pasar ya. Kalau misalnya tamunya itu mau ini ke Bedugul ya, maunya ke Ubud ya, ke Ubud, maunya ke Sanur ya, Sanur. Jadi bisa aja juga sama dengan banyak resort ya. Mulai dari pertama iklan tadi saya katakan tadi ya. Terus, nah, apakah satu rumah sakit? Iya. Jadi rumah sakit itu punya promoting juga atau hospital yang bisa mempromosikan. Ini juga satu kewajiban juga. Jadi bukan hanya kuratif ya rumah sakitnya. Ya. Terus terakhir saya nih, itu pasien kan? Kalau misalnya masuk dengan check-up dan dia sehat betul, dia pasien kan? Klien. Ya bisa pengguna atau ya apapun namanya, tapi mereka bukan pasien loh. Jadi penanganannya bukan penanganan sebagai pasien, tapi sebagai yang lain atau pengguna. Oke, akhir pertanyaan. Saya yakin berbagai pertanyaan ini akan terus berkembang ya. Dan ini ada medical awareness website yang bisa kita lihat di sini. Tapi kalau di kaki ya, Pak, ini dapat ya di chatnya ya, alamatnya ya. Terus, nah sehingga catatan akhirnya tujuan workshop ini itu kita anggap berhasil kalau nanti 2 bulan lagi atau 3 bulan lagi itu operator yang ada di medical awareness itu tambah ya. Jadi tidak hanya 1 atau 2 tapi bisa jadi 10 ya. Right? Resort atau ini yang luar negeri ya, pamit gitu. So you can click your pamit sites from our website. Yes. How many pamit sites? No? 11. Jadi pamit punya 11 sites, kita bayangkan. Tambah lagi kalau di Bali 12, so Bali will be the 12 of this. Oke, terus, nah ini yang di Bangkok ya, BDMS ya. Ini juga punya banyak jaringan. Ya. Terus, nah ini yang medical yang pertama kali ya, tepuk tangan untuk member medical. Untuk dalam sampai marketing dan berhenti dimasang di sini ya. Karena marketingnya itu sangat penting ya untuk kita kerjakan. Oke, terus saya kira ini terakhir tadi sudah bahas, terima kasih.
Ya, terima kasih Prof. Kita proses sudah ya. Ya baik, tadi beberapa pertanyaan sudah banyak dijawab. Mungkin kalau ada satu penanya karena keterbatasan waktu, ya silakan Bapak. Oh, atau Bapak ini dulu ya, biar gantian dulu ya. Nanti besok Bapak kesempatan. Besok ada temu Pak, don't worry.
Terima kasih Prof. Laksono. Saya dari di sini mewakili Kosmet sama kami juga asosiasi wellness dan aspal. Ya. Jadi kami sebenarnya dulu di Prof. Laksono kalau bisa lihat di teater Spa Resort kita pernah mengembangkan medical Pak. Jadi bahkan tim dari Jawa Barat itu dikirim dokter, perawat fisioterapi ke Yugoslavia. Ya, tahun 91 itu. Ya. Jadi justru SPA ini berangkatnya dari medical sebenarnya aslinya. Bisa dicek di standar kompetensi kerjanya. Ya, di FK-KMK itu lengkap semua. Ya. Problemnya, Prof. Laksono di sini. Problemnya adalah ketika complementary medicine itu mau naik ke level 6, level 7 artinya ke D4 atau sarjana, itu kan kompetensinya di antara 3-4 itu kan dipangkas di sana, sehingga tidak akan pernah dapat profesi. Artinya kok tidak punya kompetensi untuk sistem rujukan dan untuk daruratan. Sehingga tidak pernah ketemu antara konvensional sama non konvensional, ya tradisional. Ya, inilah problem yang mudah-mudahan melalui event ini Prof. Laksono bisa dibuka dengan adanya undang-undang baru yang Omnibus Law ini, sehingga penyumbatan di dalam proses akademik ke profesi ini terbuka, sehingga nanti kayak TCM itu ke semester 1-2 itu antara TCM dengan konvensional itu dua-duanya tuker-tukeran Prof. Sehingga kompetensi itu nanti di level 6 dan 7 itu bisa dilalui, ya. Itu dari sisi pendidikan dan SDM. Kemudian kita sebenarnya sudah lengkap dong, ya Prof. Ahli-ahli itu sudah lengkap. Tadi kalau di wellness kelemahannya adalah kompetensi yang tadi yang tidak dimiliki, sehingga yang jalan itu di level 2 dan 3. Artinya dia pelaksana, ya. Sedangkan di teman-teman di konvensional fokus di kuratif, technical know-how-nya di dalam wellness hampir nggak ada, ya. Sehingga dan undang-undang kedokteran tidak boleh konvensional sama tradisional. Di PP 103 itu sampai 2018 kalau nggak salah terakhir, ya. Sehingga sekarang lembaran baru, ya, mudah-mudahan ini obstruction di dalam regulasi itu bisa diselesaikan. Bahkan kemarin yang welcoming, ya, artinya karpet merah malah TCM, Prof. Sedangkan tradisional Indonesia asli itu benar-benar diberangus lah, tanda kutip, dari sisi regulasi, Prof. Saya izin dari sisi regulasi. Nah, ini yang mudah-mudahan nanti kita bisa punya independensi, sehingga bisa dikembangkan. Kemudian saya lama di riset, Prof. Saya pernah belajar fisioterapi sampai S1, kemudian saya pernah di Yugoslavia juga, dan di profesi kesehatan tradisional komplementer bersama Prof. Agus dan teman-teman di Kemenkes banyak lah. Nah, ini menerapkan ke sana, ya. Mohon ini nanti seperti tadi, ya, sebenarnya di riset bisa dikembangkan, Prof. SDM-nya saya jamin lengkap, ya. Cuma yang perlu dikolaborasikan antara teman-teman di medical, ya, artinya konvensional dengan tradisional untuk supaya ada jembatan integrasi. Cukup itu aja, jembatan integrasi yang membolehkan dua-duanya berjalan. Kemudian dari kelemahan di wellness, aspek screening, ya, preventif, promotif itu hampir tidak ada screening. Padahal potensial preventif untuk secondary preventif itu justru di kekuatan di screening, di anamnesis dan pemeriksaan baik objektif maupun subjektif. Ya, di sini tidak terjadi di wellness. Nah, ketika ini dikombin kolaborasi itu menjadi pendekatan yang bagus. Kemudian yang kedua adalah, Prof, kalau di wellness itu aspek bangunan, arsitek, aspek pelayanan itu servisnya sangat utama, ya. Sehingga kalau di rumah sakit, di teman-teman konvensional, karena saya pernah dinas di rumah sakit juga, ya, itu services kurang sekali, weak lah. Tapi kalau di teman-teman hospitality itu services sangat bagus. Nah, ini tinggal dikombin. Nah, jadi masukan saya di riset lebih baik dikembangkan ke wellness daripada di rumah sakit. Karena kalau di rumah sakit mindset orang kita, rumah sakit adalah orang untuk kuratif, rehabilitatif dan paliatif. Dan kalaupun satu building itu different front office, ya, walaupun satu building atau different alur pelayanannya. Karena ketika orang promotif preventif tujuannya relaksasi, revitalisasi, rejuvenasi, resiliensi, itu tidak akan pernah mau digabung dengan untuk paliatif ataupun rehabilitatif. Misalnya post stroke gitu, CVA gitu. Orang kena paresis atau hemiplegi gitu, menyatu dengan orang yang mau cuma lulur masker, masas, dia kan nggak mau dicampur. Nah, ini PR kita di situ. Jadi nanti, tapi kalau dari aspek market itu sangat bagus, Prof. Ya, mungkin itu aja sharing. Jadi mohon. Kemudian satu lagi, Prof, di wellness itu menjadi teramputasi ketika muncul Undang-Undang Nomor 2 Tahun 2022 terkait Undang-Undang Pajak, Prof. Itu kena 40 sampai 75% di pasal 58 ya. Jadi ini Prof, yang menjadi masalah, sehingga nanti semua Pemda turunannya ke undang-undang tersebut ya. Jadi contoh seperti ini kedepannya dengan Omnibus Law ini bisa kalau Gria Sehat aman, kalau KBLI-nya kan tergantung KBLI-nya. Tapi kalau nama SPA padahal itu juga wellness, Prof. Itu kena 45 sampai 75%. Mungkin itu yang sharing, mohon Prof bisa ini kedepannya kita menjadi lembaran baru dengan undang-undang yang baru, undang-undang kesehatan yang baru cukup bagus, dan turunannya nanti di PP dan Permen wellness itu bisa direalisasikan. Saya yakin kalau teman-teman bisnis sudah bisa membaca, Prof. Cuma mohon regulasi konsisten dengan pendapat tadi sudah bagus sekali, membuka lembaran baru untuk wellness tourism ini. Mungkin itu, terima kasih, Prof. Didi, Pak. Pak Didi.
Ya, dari kosmet. Ya, nah ini banyak hal yang sangat penting, Pak. Saya juga harus tahu ini. Yang pertama mengenai SDM, Pak. Nah, ini memang di Undang-Undang Kesehatan itu penting banget seperti tadi. Apa yang kita bahas sekarang ini itu memang wellness dalam konteks ilmu yang modern tadi, Pak. Modern, konvensional modern yang dipelajari di FK atau di Poltekkes. Ya. Sehingga sertifikasinya itu melalui jalur FK dan Poltekkes ya, atau stikes tadi. Ini pertama, karena ini menjadi satu isu yang sangat penting, sertifikasi. Tapi juga wellness tadi juga ada yang tradisional atau alternatif. Ya. Ini juga diakui di Undang-Undang Kesehatan, ada juga. Tapi pelatihannya beda dengan di FK ataupun di Poltekkes tadi. Ada yang nakesat ada ya, nggak tahu ya. Kemudian untuk yang sifatnya yang import dari luar negeri itu juga ada aturannya. Tapi intinya medical wellness kita itu adalah yang sekarang ini kita bahas itu yang pakai ilmu konvensional modern barat ya. Nah, tapi dikombin dengan tradisional bisa. Kalau yang akan impon kedua ya di bidang ini di tahun ini itu screening itu inti ya. Dan itu modelnya pakai diagnostik ya. Bisa model MCU yang lengkap atau mungkin yang tidak lengkap ya bisa aja ya. Tapi indikator-indikator fisiknya itu tadi seperti yang dari Ahmed itu menggunakan indikator yang terukur dengan mesin-mesin modern ya. Ini modelnya. Tapi mengenai terapinya atau terapi ya, selanjutnya itu pilihannya itu bisa misalnya ya dalam konteks saya ingin santai gitu ya, atau itu bisa Anda mau pilih fisioterapi yang Poltekkes yang produksi ya, atau model tradisional Bali. Kami pilihan loh. Pilihan ini. Jadi, juga bisa ada MCU-nya seperti ini ya. Ternyata gula darah Anda itu agak tinggi ya. Nah, pengguna di ini loh. Ini ada resort yang memberikan Balinis tradisional untuk intervensi, atau Anda mau masuk ke resort yang modern. Itu pilihan. Dan dua-duanya juga bisa, atau punya lalu hukum. Bisa harus banget ya. Ini. Nah, tapi ada tapi. Saya tanya di FK-KMK dan di Poltekkes, mereka belum siap Pak, untuk memberikan semacam notifikasi, karena juga kondisi profesinya juga lambat Pak. Jadi, nah ini logikanya Pak. Itu kan dokter umum plus kompetensi tambahan Pak. Atau kalau perawat ya perawat plus kompetensi tambahan. Nah ini kompetensi tambahan ini belum ada, termasuk misalnya di dokter umum yang kecantikan Pak. Wah ini susah banget ya. Ini akhirnya apa? Dokter umum kita itu pergi ke Singapura sama Bangkok untuk mencari tambahan dari itu. Karena di Indonesia itu nggak jelas. Dan teman-teman di spesialis itu juga nggak begitu support untuk ini saya kasih loh. Sehingga pelatihannya itu cari sendiri. Coba ditanya teman-teman dokter umum yang punya brevet atau kompetensi tambahan itu saya sekolahnya di Singapura, saya sekolahnya di Inggris atau sekolahnya di Bangkok. Nah, tapi kenapa kok tidak di FK Wiryana misalnya? Ya karena nggak ada. nggak ada namanya apa poin tambahan oleh FK-KMK untuk dokter umum yang mau masuk ke kecantikan kulit misalnya, atau tadi mengurangi apa berat badan, ini kan ini harus apa ya? Kan bisa dokter umum plus tadi, tapi ini belum. Saya mohon supaya kita dibantu karena ini banyak sekali penolakan. Saya pusing kalau pikir dengan apa teman-teman di apa beberapa tempat tadi kok mikirnya dirinya atau kelompoknya Pak, bukan mikir bangsa Pak. Ya, nah ini yang menjadi kunci. Termasuk ini Pak, saya sekarang mental health ya. Itu boleh nggak psikolog itu masuk ke praktek itu? Boleh nggak? Nah ini, ada psikolog klinis Pak. Ya, dan bisa praktek di apa resort Pak. Untuk memberikan terapi psikologis tadi. Tapi ini ada nggak di ribuan resort di Bali ini seperti itu? Belum, karena fakultas psikologi juga belum pernah kasih itu. Nah, tapi ada juga yang tradisional untuk mental health ya, itu juga ada. Kita aja juga bingung ya, ini benar-benar bagus apa enggak? Nah, ini yang mesti tahu ya. Oke, kemudian yang ketiga Pak, ini masalah pajak. Nah, ini menarik. Kalau kita tanya Pak Gubernur ya, tadi yang sudah meninggalkan jabatan Pak BMTA, Pak Oscar ya. Ya kemarin ya, betul lalu ya, yang membuka waktu itu ya. Pak Koso itu nggak happy dengan SPA. Jadi pajak itu tinggi, sengaja Pak itu usahanya, karena SPA itu nggak jelas juga. Ya, ini teman saya yang di awareness etnik itu bikin survei kecil-kecilan ya. Ternyata SPA di seminyak itu 80% itu ada posisi sosial. Jadi ini yang kedok. SPA itu bahaya sekali. Nah, ini Pak Oster kayak ini. Nah, tapi, lain lagi, apa solusinya? Memang apakah awareness itu identik dengan SPA? Enggak juga. Tadi kita lihat ya, itu kuat apa jalurnya Pak ya, produknya ya. SPA itu hanya salah satu aja. Tapi itu mendominasi Pak. Termasuk di SKB 20 pun juga ada SPA. Untuk ada kata-kata modern dan kata modern, jadi itu bisa dipakai untuk jalur masuk yang lainnya Pak, seperti kecantikan dan sebagainya. Nah, ini pertanyaan pentingnya Pak, apakah di resort itu supaya kita itu tidak tanggung-tanggung ya? Mari kita buka klinik pertama atau klinik utama. Apa harus saya? Karena di hotel atau resort itu biasanya ada klinik ya, tapi kliniknya itu untuk emergensi kalau ada tamu tiba-tiba kena serangan asma atau serangan jantung ya, itu tapi bukan untuk medical awareness. Ya. Nah, misalnya sekarang kalau yang serius betul, mengapa nggak bikin klinik utama atau pertama? Nah, kalau tidak mampu bikin, ya kontrak sama Unicare misalnya, Unicare dengan Pak Chandra ya. Pak Chandra itu apa? Klinik utama atau pertama? Pertama. Ada dua-duanya, mau pilih mana? Nah ya, kalau mau buka untuk kulit, melalui itu apa? Klinik utama ya, utama. Jadi jelas Pak izinnya Pak. Dan pajaknya juga jelas, bayarnya kan jelas Pak. Tidak persen, enggak 75% Pak, klinik enggak. 75%, 75%, enggak Pak. Tingginya, pajaknya apa pajaknya? Gua akan segitu. Tolong Pak masuk ke klinik, jangan pakai nama SPA Pak.
Ya izin Bro, jadi sebenarnya itu kan apa namanya masalah KPI-nya standarnya sebenarnya untuk SPA itu jelas, cuma dalam pelaksanaan pemberian izin waktu itu ada kong-kali-kong oknum sebenarnya. Jadi kalau apa di BMK nomor 8 sudah jelas itu standarnya, di Permen Parekraf nomor 14 jelas Prof, sampai ke SNI-nya pun sudah ada gitu. Cuma penerapannya di lapangan seperti itu. Tapi kalau yang di medis ini memang tidak termasuk karena KBLI-nya berbeda.
Ya.
Itu aja Bro. Terima kasih Bro.
Saya bisa pakai medik langsung Pak. Jika saja di klinik pertama atau utama. Ya. Nah kalau itu tradisional, pakai dia sehat itu Pak. Pakai izin itu. Ya. Nah, jadi kita betul-betul bisnisnya itu sah dulu Pak. Sah. Tidak apa gujak itu juga apa jengki itu ya. Juga enggak, udah juga enggak, terus ujinya apa? Enggak tahu, nah, ini bayar betul. Langsung aja. Dan nanti modelnya yang Unicare ya, nanti itu kan kontrak Pak ya nanti ya. kontrak yang ngurus izin kan demikian Pak. Ya, tempatnya bisa sewa atau apalah ya, dengan seperti itu ya. Nah, jadi ini Pak, jadi aspek legalnya itu kita harus atur betul Pak. Dan kalau nggak pakai langsung aja pakai entah kredit pertama atau utama Pak. Ya. Oke, saya kira itu Pak ya. Gitu ya. Tapi ini betul barang baru Pak. Saya bilang barang baru. Kadang-kadang kalau di Jawa itu ada ratusan resort yang bisa bikin seperti ini akan mendorong ekonomi rakyat termasuk jamu dan sebagainya, jamu lokal ya. Karena kita berharap juga jamu itu jangan semuanya sasetan ya, tau ya. Saya terus terang aja pengen jamu itu kayak kopi. Kopi sasetan itu hanya orang-orang yang tidak mempunyai preferensi pada kopi yang baik. Jadi beli kopi sasetan yang harga 2.500 itu gula rasa kopi. Betul kan? Ya, tapi yang kita cari kan kopi segar ya, baru di brew ya. Yang lokal jadi seperti kopi Kintamani itu kan, wah enak banget. Itu berapa harganya? Kan 25.000 ya, berapa? Ya 20.000, bukan yang 25.000 nah, bisa nggak jamu itu juga lokal juga Pak, dengan jamu yang segar bukan jamu sasetan. Ya, itu yang kita kejar. Oke?
Ya baik, karena waktu juga maka kami kembalikan. Ada.
Oh iya, betul.
Ya mungkin saya mohon maaf Pak ya.
Nanti bisa diberapa?
Ya, kami kembalikan ke MC untuk selanjutnya. Terima kasih banyak Prof.
Ya, sama-sama.
Hadirin, acara selanjutnya adalah penyerahan sertifikat penghargaan kepada para narasumber dan juga moderator seminar pada hari ini. Kami mohon kepada Mr. Christopher untuk maju ke depan. So please come to in front of the stage. And then for the second, Profesor Dr. Laksono Trisnantoro M.Sc Ph.D. Dan kepada moderator Dr. Jaya Mas Ph.D BMTA. Dan kami mohonkan kepada yang terhormat Bapak Kepala Dinas Kesehatan Provinsi Bali atau yang mewakili pada kesempatan kali ini Dr. Iwan untuk menyerahkan piagam sertifikat.
Iwan Putri Kopan.
Iwan Trisnantoro.
Ya, bertepuk tangan untuk bisa Wiryana, lalu Prof. Laksono sudah menjadi narasumber pada hari ini dan juga moderator kita. Ya. Baik, dilanjutkan ke sesi foto bersama mungkin. Turut mengundang Dr. Patra dan Ketua M.Sc untuk juga ikut sesi foto bersama. Ya, beri tepuk tangan sekali lagi untuk seluruh narasumber dan moderator. Kami mohonkan kepada Bapak Kepala Dinas Kesehatan Provinsi Bali atau yang mewakili pada kesempatan ini, Bapak Dr. Kadek Iwan Darmawan MPH untuk memberikan sambutan dan arahan untuk penguatan produk medical wellness. Kepada yang terhormat Bapak Dr. Kadek Iwan Darmawan, kami silakan.
Baik, terima kasih. MC yang bermotor, yang saya hormati Prof. Laksono sebagai staf khusus kesehatan, kemudian Ketua BMTA, Ketua senior saya Dr. Patra, Ketua BMTA, Ketua M.Sc, Litris ya. Thank you for presentation. Good presentation. Bapak Ibu sekalian dari 10 rumah sakit ya, kalau salah 10 rumah sakit dan klinik yang hadir pada kesempatan ini, jadi izin Kayak waktu Bapak Kadis, tadi Bapak Kadis ada mendadak ada puskesmas datang ke dinas kesehatan, buru-buru ke dinas kesehatan untuk menerima puskesmas. Jadi sekali lagi terima kasih kami sampaikan kepada BMTA dan M.Sc juga atas keseluruhan kegiatan ini, dan pada Prof. Laksono ucapan terima kasih sudah luar biasa ya menggiatkan untuk aktivitas medical wellness di Provinsi Bali. Saat ini baru 10 provider ya yang mengikuti kegiatan ini, dan kami harapkan sesuai dengan arahan Bapak Gubernur bahwa kita di Bali itu harus semua fasilitas kesehatan kita itu dapat mengembangkan pelayanan kesehatan, khususnya medical wellness. Terkhusus lagi adalah untuk pelayanan kesehatan tradisional. Ya, Bali ini tradisional medicine yang ada di Bali untuk sebagai salah satu modalitas pilihan untuk masyarakat Bali. Nah, itu yang diharapkan dapat dikembangkan. Kita pernah melakukan kegiatan ini pada waktu Bapak Ibu menghadapi pandemi COVID. Kami dengan BMTA mirip dengan ini, cuma modalitasnya adalah penanganan COVID. Ya, rumah sakit, klinik itu datang ke datang ke hotel-hotel waktu itu. Kami dengan Dr. Patra waktu itu. Ya, itu modalitasnya untuk terapi COVID. Sekarang bedanya adalah modalitasnya adalah medical wellness dengan pilihan-pilihan tadi. Kenapa tidak bisa? Harusnya bisa. Ya, COVID aja kita bisa waktu itu. Hanya dalam waktu yang sangat cepat itu. Ya, itu rapat-rapat bisa kerjakan. Nah, sekarang medical wellness kenapa nggak bisa? Ya, jadi tadi sudah disampaikan banyak hal. Bali mempunyai potensi. Wisatawan domestik kita tinggi, wisatawan mancanegara kita 6 juta, mungkin dari pariwisata sudah 6 juta kita di Bali ya untuk target wisatawan asing. Yang domestik mungkin sudah di atas 9 jutaan. Nah, itu potensi kita untuk bisa mengembangkan. Ya, mungkin kedepannya kami harapkan nanti dari versi yang masih untuk getol lagi nih, ya menyampaikan kepada masing-masing rumah sakit ya untuk bisa mengembangkan medical wellness ini, sehingga nanti ke depan kita bukan hidup dari BPJS saja. Ya, banyak rumah sakit yang kelabakan juga ya uring-uringan kalau BPJS-nya sendirian. Ini salah satu potensi kita nanti ke depan ya. Nah, itu rumah sakit. Kalau rumah sakit yang sudah memiliki SDM, memiliki prasarana yang unggul. Dan ke depan diharapkan sekali lagi rumah sakit itu kita itu kan diminta untuk kelas rawat inap standar. Mumpung mempersiapkan itu mohon nanti untuk tata bangunan rumah sakit itu juga mengembangkan ini medical wellness ini. Ya, RSUP sekarang sudah berkembang, bahkan RSUP minta jadi klinik itu. Yang rumah sakit murah itu, ya, yang dikembangkan estetika itu minta jadi klinik supaya itu tidak berbau dengan rumah sakit yang konvensional. Nah, nanti ke depan ya aturan-aturan kita siap mendukung ya dari dinas kesehatan provinsi kabupaten kota, dan kita advokasi untuk ada Prof. Laksono di sini. Mungkin ke depan itu yang kita kejar juga. Mumpung sekarang kita lagi menyusun peraturan pemerintah untuk turunan undang-undang. Mungkin itu yang dapat kami sampaikan. Sekali lagi terima kasih, dan kami harapkan semua Bapak Ibu bisa mengikuti acara ini, dan seperti yang disampaikan Prof. Laksono, implementasinya bukan lagi teori-teori, tapi sudah berimplementasi. Itu kami tutup dengan mengaturkan salam santi, Om Santi Santi Santuan. Sukses. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Baiklah hadirin yang kami hormati, maka demikianlah acara seminar internasional penyusunan bisnis plan untuk medical wellness. Sekali lagi mari kita beri tepuk tangan yang meriah untuk acara seminar pada hari ini. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya. Acara seminar kami tutup dengan makan siang. Baik hadirin disilakan untuk menikmati hidangan yang sudah disediakan di lobi meeting room. Selamat siang.